Senior brother, if we don't hand over the spirit stones, Luoyun sect is going to be disbanded and turned into a latrine. Lu Xiaoya cried, her face smeared with mud. Her tiny, filthy hands gripped my sleeve tight. I sat there in my grandmaster's chair, which was missing a leg, looking at my 3 starving disciples. I silently pulled out a rusty wrench I'd brought with me from my university's computer lab in my previous life. "What are you crying for?" I asked. "The old man didn't leave me this mountain, just so you could spend all day worrying." I tapped the stone table with my wrench. It let out a heavy, dull thud. Suddenly, the front gate was kicked open. The wooden doors shattered into splinters that flew across the yard. Zhao Daiju swaggered in, followed by 4 burly thugs. He brushed the dust off his sleeves and looked at me with a sneer. "Sect leader Huang, quite the attitude you have," Zhao Daiju said. 100 low-grade Qi blood pills. If you can't produce them today, this land belongs to the Qingyun sect. Lu Xiaoya scrambled behind me in terror. My 2 older disciples, Wang Taizhu and Li Guden, stepped forward with their hoes, though their legs were shaking like leaves. I didn't even look up. I just stared at Zhao Daju's fat face. "You know, they say you should leave people a way out," I said calmly. Luoyun sect has a 100-year heritage. Even now, this land is worth at least 500 low-grade spirit stones. You want to swallow it for 100 pills? That's just greedy. Zhao Daju burst out laughing. "Heritage? Huang Yugue, have you lost your mind? Everyone knows your sect doesn't even have a furnace. You survive by eating weeds from the backyard. I'm robbing you in broad daylight. What are you going to do about it?" He waved his hand, and his thugs drew their long blades. The steel shimmered with a faint spiritual light. Xiaoya closed her eyes. Taizhu and Guden swallowed hard. I stood up from my broken chair and cracked my neck. "Fine. 100 pills," I said. "Wait here for 10 minutes. Zhao Daju blinked. He looked at me like I was an idiot. 10 minutes? You think refining pills is like taking a dump? You can't just squeeze them out. I ignored him. I turned and walked toward a pile of scrap metal in the corner of the yard. It was a heap of broken artifacts and rusted pots left behind by generations of my sect's ancestors. As I looked at the junk, a bright blue interface flashed in my mind. The Universal Automation Programming System had activated. My available computing power was at 100%. The system prompted me to enter the basic logic code. I knelt before the scrap pile and placed my hands on a rusted furnace fragment. My fingers began to move. If a programmer from my old world saw me, they would have recognized the motion instantly. I was typing on an invisible keyboard. Blue streams of data, invisible to everyone else, flowed from my fingertips into the rusted metal. "What is he doing?" Zhao Daju muttered, watching my back. "Is he putting on a show? Fine. I'll give him 10 minutes to see what kind of trick he pulls." My hands moved faster. I grabbed a broken bellows, 2 leaking iron pots, and a few rusted pipes, forcing them together. The data streams surged through the junk, welding the components together like a mysterious circuit board. A notification dinged in my head. Basic refining logic was recorded. The automated formula furnace version 1.0 was complete. I stood up and brushed the dust off my hands. In front of me stood a bizarre metal contraption. The base was a square iron box with a funnel-shaped opening on top. A long exhaust pipe stuck out the side, and a small drawer sat at the bottom. It looked like a cheap boiler that could explode at any second. "This is your furnace?" Zhao Daju pointed at the junk pile and roared with laughter. "Huang Yugue, you've gone insane. You built a chamber pot out of trash and think you can fool me." I didn't answer him. I looked at Taizhu. "Go get those 2 baskets of weeds we dried in the back." Taizhu froze. "But senior brother, those are just pig grass." "Just get them," I snapped. Taizhu didn't dare argue. He ran to the shed and dragged out 2 baskets of green weeds. This was the cheapest vegetation in the cultivation world. Even the poorest rogue cultivators wouldn't look at it twice. I grabbed a handful and walked to the machine. Right in front of everyone, I stuffed the weeds into the funnel. Zhao Daju laughed, so hard tears came to his eyes. "Refining pills with pig grass? If you can actually make a Qi blood pill out of that, I'll eat this entire furnace." I picked up my wrench and whacked the side of the machine. "Start up." With a muffled boom, the machine began to vibrate violently. The exhaust pipe belched thick black smoke. Inside, The sound of grinding gears was so loud it sounded like hundreds of knives were mincing meat. Xiaoya covered her ears and backed away. Zhao Dezhu stopped laughing. He stared at the rattling machine, sensing something was wrong. The vibration reached a peak, and then a crisp ding came from the bottom drawer. It sounded exactly like a microwave finishing a meal. I walked over and pulled the drawer open. An incredibly potent medicinal fragrance instantly flooded the yard. Zhao Dezhu's nose twitched. His eyes widened until they looked like brass bells. "Impossible!" he screamed, lunging forward like a rabid dog. He shoved me aside to stare into the drawer. 12 round, glowing red pills lay there. Each one was perfectly formed with clear cloud patterns on the surface. "High grade. These are high-grade qi blood pills." Zhao Dezhu's voice cracked. His hands shook as he picked one up and sniffed it frantically. "How is there no toxicity? How is the purity this high? You only put in pig grass." I looked at him, amused by his shock. "Hey, Zhao Dezhu, what was that you said about eating something?" He didn't even hear me. His mind was blown. In the cultivation world, refining pills was an art. Temperature, timing, and the quality of herbs changed everything. Even a master refiner would celebrate if they got 3 mid-grade pills from a single batch. High-grade pills were miracles that only happened when the stars aligned. But I had just used a pile of scrap metal and some common weeds to make a dozen of them in 10 minutes. I wasn't just breaking the rules of cultivation. I was grinding them into the dirt. Sect leader Huang. "No, Master Huang." Zhao Dezhu dropped to his knees with a heavy thud. He held the glowing pill in both hands, looking up at me with desperate, wide eyes. "Sell this pill to me. I will buy it for 10 times. No, 20 times the market price." I dragged a broken, 3-legged armchair over and sat down. Crossing my legs, I gave him a cold, amused stare. "What about the debt for those 100 low-grade qi blood pills? How should we settle that?" "Wiped clean. Absolutely wiped clean." Zhao Dezhu kowtowed frantically, his forehead smacking against the dirt. "If Master Huang is willing to let me distribute these supreme-grade pills, the Qingyun sect will never trouble the Luoyun sect again. I swear it." I stroked my chin, pretending to consider it. "Distribution, huh? That wasn't a bad idea." "Fine," I said, leaning forward. "But my production volume is going to be massive. Can you handle it?" Zhao Dezhu thumped his chest hard. "Don't you worry, Master Huang. I have survived in the Fong market for over a decade. I can move any amount of stock you give me." I stood up without another word. I walked over to the 2 large baskets of common pig grass sitting in the corner. I lifted them up and dumped the weeds straight into the machine's rusty hopper. Then, I grabbed a heavy, broken stone from the ground and wedged it down to hold the power switch in place. The machine roared to life. A deafening, ground-shaking rumble echoed through the yard. Ding, ding, ding. A barrage of crisp chimes rang out like a sudden downpour of rain. The bottom drawer kept popping open, slamming back, and popping open again. Hundreds, then thousands of glowing red supreme-grade qi blood pills spouted out of the opening like a volcano of popcorn. The red pills piled up instantly, forming a small shimmering mountain that spilled across the dirt and rolled right against Zhao Dezhu's knees. A thick, suffocatingly rich medicinal fragrance exploded into the air, instantly boosting the spiritual energy in the yard by 3 entire levels. Zhao Dezhu collapsed flat onto his backside. He stared at the growing mountain of red pills, his mouth hanging wide open. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, and the thick blue veins on his forehead throbbed as if they were about to burst. He was completely, utterly numb. The red pills kept spraying out without any sign of stopping. Zhao Dezhu just sat there, drool pooling at the corner of his mouth and dripping down onto his Taoist robe without him even realizing it. Beside him, Lu Xiaoya bit down hard on her own fingers. She was terrified she might scream out loud and ruin the moment. Wang Taizhu and Li Guden had already lost all strength in their legs, hugging each other tightly as they slumped onto the muddy ground. I walked over and casually kicked Zhao Dezhu out of the way. I grabbed a ragged burlap sack from the corner and began sweeping the supreme-grade pills into it like I was bagging common potatoes. "Pack them up. Pack them all up." I hoisted the heavy sack and flung it straight into Zhao Dezhu's face. "What are you staring at?" I barked. "Take them and sell them." Zhao Dezhu scrambled frantically to catch the sack, clutching it tightly against his chest. The warm, Radiating heat from the pills and the overwhelming aroma reminded him that this was not a dream. As sect leader Huang, Zhao Dezhu stammered like a broken, wheezing bellows. How many spirit stones will this even sell for? I rolled my eyes at his lack of ambition. Who cares how much it sells for? The market price for a supreme-grade chi blood pill is 10 low-grade spirit stones, right? I will give you a wholesale price of 5 stones apiece. Whatever profit you make beyond, that is your own business. But I have one strict condition. I leaned down, staring directly into his bloodshot eyes. I want cash. No credits, no IOUs. I want immediate spirit stones. You finish selling one bag, you bring the stones back, and only then do you get to take the next one. Zhao Dezhu felt his heart leaping straight into his throat. Buying at 5 stones and selling at 10. This single sack held at least 1,000 pills. That meant a net profit of 5,000 low-grade spirit stones. Even if he slaved away as an outer sect deacon for the Qingyun sect for 100 years, he could never dream of making that much money. Sect leader Huang, you are my real grandfather. Zhao Dezhu squeezed the sack with a death grip, terrified someone might snatch it away. Just you wait. I am heading to the Fong market right this second. 2 hours max, and I will bring your spirit stones back. Zhao Dezhu turned and ran, dragging his 4 completely dazed thugs along with him. They scrambled and tumbled out of the front gates like a pack of frightened dogs. The yard finally fell silent. Only the broken machine remained, emitting a low, rhythmic hum. Because the pig grass had finally run out, the stream of pills stopped. Lu Xiaoya crept up to the machine on tiptoe. She extended a trembling finger and cautiously poked the rusty exhaust pipe. The intense heat scorched her skin, making her yank her hand back with a sharp gasp. Sect leader brother, what kind of divine treasure is this? Her eyes shone with an intense, golden light. Are we about to strike it rich? I looked at my 3 worthless, wide-eyed disciples. I walked over and delivered a heavy smack to each of their heads. Strike it rich? You are terrified by just this tiny bit of production. I pointed a finger at the rattling metal contraption. This is the automatic formula furnace 1.0. As long as we feed it raw materials, it can work 24 hours a day without a single pause. Do you even understand what this means? My 3 disciples shook their heads in perfect, clueless unison. It means we are going to completely rewrite the economic landscape of the entire cultivation world. A flash of fanatical zeal burned in my eyes. In my past life, I was squeezed to death by ruthless capitalists. In this life, I was going to become the biggest capitalist the cultivation world had ever seen. Zhao Dezhu stared at the 3 bulging hemp sacks full of pills. He looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. He eventually regained his composure, but his face was tight with worry. Lord Huang, he whispered, leaning in close to my ear. I can handle the stock, but selling this much, this fast, we've already attracted the attention of the big players in the city. The Baichao Pavilion has put out the word that we're selling fake medicine to disrupt the market. They might send people to cause trouble. I raised an eyebrow. The Baichao Pavilion. They were the local monopoly, controlling 70% of the pill business in the region. Zhao Dezhu wiped cold sweat from his forehead. Their pavilion master is a foundation establishment cultivator at the 7th stage. He keeps a small army of thugs at the late stages of chi refinement. Lord Huang, maybe we should lay low for a while. I laughed. I looked around my yard full of scrap metal and junk. Laying low? Those words didn't exist in my dictionary. I patted Zhao Dezhu on the shoulder. You just focus on selling the pills, I said. Anyone who tries to cut off my cash flow will learn exactly what saturation fire means. Zhao Dezhu left with the 3 sacks of top-tier blood chi pills, trembling with every step. He kept looking back over his shoulder, terrified that the moment he left, the Luoyun sect would be leveled by the Baichao Pavilion. I didn't give those thugs a second thought. My mind was already on increasing production. Taizhu, go Dan. I roared toward the back mountain. 2 figures covered in mud and grass clippings came scrambling into the yard. They were panting like dogs, tongues practically hanging out. Senior brother, the slopes are bald, Wang Taizhu gasped, leaning against the doorframe. We've pulled every blade of grass, even the thorns. I looked at their pathetic half-basket of raw materials. It was too slow. Human labor had its limits. I walked over to a crate of low-grade spirit stones and grabbed a handful. Fine. Go rest, I told them. I turned toward the abandoned weapon refining workshop at the back of the yard. Xiaoya, bring that crate of stones in. And find me some iron ingots and aluminum tracks. Lu Xiaoyao perked up instantly at the mention of work. She dragged that heavy crate behind me like a pint-sized powerhouse. Inside the workshop, dust lay thick on everything. I had Xiaoyao pile up the scrap iron and some old aluminum tracks I found in a corner. I was going to build an automated spirit grass harvester. Universal Automation Programming System, activate, I muttered. Available computing power, 100%. I pressed my hands onto the iron ingots. Blue data streams erupted from my fingertips. This time, the reaction was violent. Sparks flew everywhere. The sound of metal twisting and shrieking filled the room. In my mind, I rapidly constructed the logic framework for a mechanical beast. A tread-based chassis. A spiritual power core. High-frequency oscillating chainsaws on the front. An auto-patrolling module. A friend or foe identification system. I was forcibly crossbreeding cultivation arrays with modern mechanical engineering. Form, I shouted. A blinding blue light flashed. A rugged, violent-looking steel beast appeared in the center of the workshop. It was 2 meters long, sitting on wide treads. The upper body was a rounded iron hunk with 2 mechanical arms extending from the front. Each arm held a half-meter-long spiritual power chainsaw. On its back was a slot for a power core. Senior brother, what kind of monster is that? Xiaoya asked, peeking through the doorway. I grabbed a handful of spirit stones and shoved them into the slot. This is the automated tread-based harvester 1.0. I hit the start button. The machine let out a deafening roar. You? I'm the manager of Baichao Pavilion. Let's not waste time. Those top-tier blood chi pills appearing in the market. You're the ones making them, right? I nodded. So what? Greed flashed in his eyes. Hand over the alchemist and the formula. The Baichao Pavilion might let you live. Otherwise, this mountain becomes your grave today. He waved his hand. The 12 thugs fanned out, surrounding the yard. They drew their enchanted swords, the blades humming with sharp energy. I looked at these arrogant cultivators and started to laugh. Manager Qian, I said, grinning. Do you have any idea how dangerous it is to threaten a factory director inside his own plant? Qian Dafu blinked. Factory what? You've lost your mind. Get him, break his legs, and take the girl back with us. The thugs roared and charged. I didn't back up. I raised my wrench and slammed it against the wall 3 times. Asterisk clang. 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 Asterisk. Clang. Harvester, initiate defense mode. Target all non-sect personnel. Instruction, shave them clean. A bone-chilling mechanical roar erupted from the workshop. The 2-meter-long steel beast smashed through the wooden doors like a runaway tank. The treads crunched over the stone floor, pulverizing the tiles. The chainsaws spun into a blur, creating a localized windstorm. The 2 thugs in front didn't even have time to react before the harvester was on them. What the hell is this? They yelled, swinging their swords. Clang, clang. The enchanted blades hit the iron shell, leaving nothing but white scratches. The harvester's mechanical arms lunged forward. The saws swept right over their heads. ZZZZT. Sparks flew along with hair and bits of fabric. The 2 thugs screamed as they were knocked back. The tops of their heads were perfectly bald, shaved clean down to the scalp. Their clothes were shredded into ribbons by the aftershock of the saws. In a second, they were transformed into bald, naked men. My hair. The entire yard fell into a deathly silence. The walnuts in Qiandafu's hand hit the dirt. His eyes bulged as he stared at the steel monster rampaging through the yard. The harvester didn't slow down for a second. Bang! Asterisk, the wet patch on his pants kept spreading. Sect leader Lin, spare me, he wailed. I don't want the formula. I want to audit your pills. I'll pay for the wall. I'll pay for the door. Just let me go, please. The 12 bald thugs in the corner started banging their heads against the ground in unison. The harvester sat there, its saw teeth still vibrating slightly. A few strands of hair were still caught in the metal. Qian Dafu caught a glimpse of it and let out a strangled yelp. Stop it. Please, ancestor, make it stop spinning. I leaned on my old wrench and looked down at him. Why would I kill you? Killing is illegal. Plus, disposing of a body takes way too much time. I've got a schedule to keep. Qian Dafu froze, his forehead still pressed to the dirt. He didn't dare look up. I turned around and waved my hand, my smile becoming much friendlier. Xiaoya, get Manager Qian some tea. A guest is a guest. Here at the Falling Cloud sect, we pride ourselves on customer service. Lu Xiaoya looked around the empty, dilapidated workshop and whispered, Senior brother, we don't have any tea. Just put a leaf in some plain water, I replied. It's the thought that counts. Xiaoya nodded seriously. She ran to the water vat, scooped out a bowl of cold water, and plucked a single leaf of pigweed from a nearby basket. She placed it carefully in the bowl and handed it over. Manager Qian, please have some tea. Qian Dafu stared at the weed floating in the water. His lips trembled. Thank you, sect leader Lin. This tea, it's... I pulled over a broken wooden chair and sat down. Reaching into my robe, I pulled out 3 sheets of paper covered in cramped handwriting. At the top of the first page, I had written a title in big, messy characters. Falling Cloud Industrial Group Regional Exclusive Agency Agreement. I slid the contract in front of him, grinning. Don't be scared, Manager Qian. I'm a reasonable man. Let's talk business. Qian Dafu took the papers with shaking hands. He barely read 3 lines before his eyelids started twitching. Grade 1 blood chi pills. Wholesale price, 8 low-grade spirit stones per pill. He looked up sharply. Zhao Dezhu only pays 5 stones. Why am I paying 8? Zhao Dezhu is a pioneer agent, I explained smoothly. You're a regional exclusive agent. The service level is completely different. I pointed to the second page, signaling for him to keep reading. He swallowed hard, his voice getting quieter with every word. Exclusive franchise fee, 3,000 spirit stones. Monthly channel management fee, 1,000 stones. Monthly brand usage fee, 500 stones. Late payment penalty, 300 stones per day. He finished the last word and looked at me, completely dazed. Sect leader Lin, are you just robbing me? My face darkened. Manager Qian, watch your language. This is a formal business partnership. 8 stones per pill, plus 3 different fees, he stammered. How am I supposed to make money? You get exclusive rights for 500 miles, I said, spreading my arms. If anyone else wants to buy my pills for 8 stones, I won't even sell to them. They have to go through you. And if I can't sell them, then it means you're incompetent, I shrugged. Fees are non-refundable. Qian Dafu gripped the contract so hard his knuckles turned white. He had spent 10 years in the markets, scamming rogue cultivators and cheating herb farmers. He was a shark. But compared to me, he realized his old scams were practically charity work. Sect leader Lin, can the franchise fee be lower? Maybe 2,000. I can do 2,000 up front, I said. Qian Dafu's face lit up for a split second. The other 1,000 will be a payment plan, I added, with a 200 stone monthly service charge. His mouth twitched. What about the management fee? Who could possibly make you feel insecure? Stop talking. Thumbprint. Now. With tears in his eyes, Qian Dafu bit his finger and pressed his bloody thumb onto the bottom of the page. A red glow flared across the paper before sinking into his forehead. The oath was set. I nodded, satisfied, and held out my hand. Initial franchise fee, management fee, and brand fee. That's 4,500 spirit stones. Qian Dafu clutched the storage bag at his waist. Right now, rules are rules. You don't get the goods until the franchise is active. But I came here to talk about the formula. I didn't bring that much cash. I glanced at the harvester. Harvester, help Manager Qian remember his budget. The blades moved forward 6 inches. Qian Dafu immediately ripped the bag off his belt and dumped everything onto the ground. Spirit stones clattered into a small mountain, mixed with pills, talismans, and a few low-grade magical tools. Lu Xiaoya dove onto the pile, her abacus clicking furiously. 4,732 low-grade stones. Senior brother. It's all here. Qian Dafu forced a pathetic smile. The extra 232 stones. I can have those back, right? I pulled out a charcoal pen and added a line to the contract. The remainder will be kept as a non-refundable deposit for your first shipment. Then how many pills do I get today? 29. You can pay the balance for the 30th next time. Qian Dafu almost collapsed again. 3,000 stones for a franchise, and he didn't even get a single free sample. Sect leader Lin, the 3rd page says there's a free gift for new members, he cried, pointing at the fine print. I looked at the page. All right, The gift description is very clear. 1 free burlap sack. Xiaoya immediately grabbed a ragged sack from the corner and stuffed it into his arms. Here is your gift, Manager Qian. Qian Dafu hugged the empty sack, and the tears finally started rolling down his face. I waved him off. Pleasure doing business. Come back soon. The 12 bald thugs scrambled to their feet, hauled their boss up, and sprinted out the gate. Qian Dafu's silk robes were covered in footprints, and he was still clutching that dirty burlap sack like it was his last possession on earth. As soon as they were gone, Xiaoya collapsed onto the pile of stones, laughing until she couldn't breathe. Senior brother, we're rich. We're actually rich. Wang Taizhu and Li Guden crept closer, their eyes glued to the mountain of treasure. I reached into the pile, pulled out 6 stones, and tossed 2 to each of them. Take them, I said. We're just getting started. This is your overtime bonus for last night, I said, tossing 2 spirit stones to each of them. Wang Taizhu held the stones in his palms, his eyes turning red instantly. Sect leader, I've been here for 5 years. This is the first time I've ever been paid. Li Guden stuffed his stones into his shirt, his voice trembling with excitement. From now on, I'll pull as many weeds as you want. Just say the word. Xiaoya hugged her 2 stones, a sweet, unstoppable smile lighting up her face. Senior brother, you're the best boss in the world. Old Kai nodded in my head, sounding satisfied. See that? That's what I call company culture. 6 stones for total loyalty. The return on investment here is incredible. I ignored him and started planning a transportation module for the harvester. An hour later, at the top floor of the 100-herb pavilion, Qiandafu was dragged into the hall by 2 thugs. He collapsed onto his knees before sect leader Sun Henian. Sun Henian looked at the room full of bald heads, his expression darkening by the second. Who did this? He asked coldly. Qiandafu held up the ragged burlap sack and burst into tears. Sect leader, the Luoyan sect went too far. They forced me to sign a contract, robbed me blind, and insulted our entire pavilion. Sun Henian snatched the agreement. As he read, the jade tablet in his other hand snapped in 2. 8 stones per pill, plus 3 extra fees. Does Lin Yuan think I'm a charity? Qiandafu sobbed on the floor, snot running down his face. Sect leader, that iron monster is too fierce. 12 late-stage chi refiners couldn't last half an hour. My humiliation is nothing, but we can't let the pavilion lose face. A village elder stood up, cupping his fists. Sect leader, let me take men and flatten the Luoyan sect. Sun Henian raised a hand to stop him. His eyes were fixed on the back of the contract, where the machine's requirements were listed. Any low-level spirit grass would work. A cold sneer curled his lips. Violence causes deaths, Sun Henian whispered. Starvation causes them to crawl. Tell every pharmacy, merchant, and farmer within 500 miles to stop all supplies to the Luoyan sect. Not a single blade of grass is to be sold to them. The elder hesitated, but they can just gather them in the mountains. Then buy the mountains out, Sun Henian commanded, throwing the contract into a brazier. Raise our purchase price. I want that machine out of fuel and dead within 3 days. The next morning, the harvester's intake funnel was bone dry. Wang Taizhu sprinted into the courtyard, losing a shoe in his haste. Senior brother, it's bad. The market won't sell us a single blade of grass. The machine is going to stop. I frowned. If they won't sell, we go to the mountains. I ran to 7 shops. Wang Taizhu gasped. I pointed my wrench toward the west. The 100,000 mountains. Their smiles froze. There are spirit beasts in there. Even the outskirts have poisonous insects. If we go in there, we won't even come back with our baskets. I walked over to the harvester. The saw blades still had bits of hair stuck to them from yesterday's fight. I tossed 3 captured storage bags onto the machine and poured 3,000 low-grade spirit stones into the fuel slot. Xiaoya winced. 3,000. Senior brother, that's all of it. You have to spend money to make money, I said, pulling up the system interface. Asterisk detected upgradable automation equipment. Harvester version 1.0. Available modules, spirit radar, vacuum intake device. Cost, 3,000 stones, asterisk. I hit confirm. Blue light flooded the harvester. The iron shell expanded, a disc-shaped probe rose from the top, and 3 thick suction tubes sprouted from the back. The storage bags were locked into place at the ends of the tubes. Asterisk upgrade complete. Hunter Harvester version 1.5. Detection range, 10 miles. Auto-collect, auto-sort, and auto-store enabled. Asterisk. Xiaoya circled the machine, poking the tubes. What if it's not worth money? Gooden asked. It'll bring it back for the furnace anyway, I replied. Taiju looked at the giant saw blades. What if it hits a beast? I tapped the iron shell with my wrench. Then it'll give the beast a haircut too. I opened the system map and drew a massive circle around the outskirts of the mountains. Auto hunt zone set. Route planned. Massacre mode enabled. Start. The engine roared. Black smoke billowed from the sides as the treads tore out of the sect gates. It's so fast, Taiju yelled, nearly getting knocked over. Does it know the way back? Don't worry, I said. It's smarter than the three of you put together. The harvester thundered down the mountain path, crushing rocks into dust. A group of rogue cultivators gathering herbs heard the noise and dove into the bushes. What was that? One gasped. That iron monster from the Luoyan sect. The one that scalped the pavilion guys. It's heading into the 100,000 mountains. At the back of the crowd, a sharp-faced cultivator lowered his hat and sprinted toward the 100-herb pavilion. Half an hour later, Sun Henian listened to the report, a mocking grin spreading across his face. He sent that pile of scrap into the mountains. Sun Henian laughed. He really has lost his mind. The machine moved fast. It tore down the mountain path, heading straight for the outer perimeter of the 100,000 mountains. Back at the pavilion, Qian Dafu sat with his bald head gleaming, listening to the reports. Sun Henian perked up at the news. That area was crawling with spirit beasts. A single iron-clad rhino at the peak of the chi refining stage could stomp that pile of scrap metal into a pancake. Sun Henian picked up his tea lid, gently brushing away the floating leaves. He told his men to keep a death grip on the Luoyun sect's movements. He wanted to watch Lin Yuan's business crumble personally. Meanwhile, the hunter-harvester slammed into the forest. The spirit radar on top spun like a blurring fan, sending pulses of blue light through the thick brush. The system started pinging. It found 472 low-grade spirit herbs, 192 poisonous stalks, and a massive list of unknown usable materials. 2 rows of spirit-powered saws roared to life. Bushes were shredded. Leaves swirled. Herbs hidden deep in rock crevices were ripped out by the roots. 3 vacuum tubes extended, inhaling soil, stems, and leaves directly into the storage bags. The machine didn't pick or choose. It didn't detour. If the radar saw it, the vacuum took it. After an hour, a 30-foot-wide path of absolute nothingness stretched through the forest. The machine didn't just take the herbs. It scraped off 3 layers of topsoil. A few venomous snakes crawled out of their holes, only to be sucked into the tubes instantly. The system flashed a quick notification. Snake gall can be used for medicine. Snake meat can be sent to the cafeteria. Back at the sect, I leaned back in my Grandmaster's chair, watching the remote feed floating in the air. Xiaoya was huddled next to me, her abacus clicking every time a herb hit the bag. 20 stones. 30 stones. That big one was worth 50. Taiju stared at the rising numbers, his jaw hanging open. We hadn't been out there long, and we'd already collected 3,000 pounds of material without paying a single herb farmer a dime. It's all free, Gooden asked. I shifted into a more comfortable position. First come, first served. And we got there first. Xiaoya's voice trembled with excitement. I nodded, and a brilliant smile spread across her face. Senior brother, I really love this business. Suddenly, the screen shook. A 20-foot-long iron-clad rhino crashed through the brush, blocking the harvester's path. It lowered its head, thick hooves churning the dirt, the armor plates on its back glowing with spiritual light. Peak chi refining. Taiju screamed. The rhino charged. The ground shook under its weight as it smashed through boulders in its way. Gooden gripped the back of my chair, begging me to make the machine run. Run for what? I asked. The cafeteria is low on meat. The harvester charged head-on. The rhino's horn slammed into the iron shell, pushing the machine back half a yard. Then, 2 mechanical arms snapped shut. The spirit saws pressed into the rhino's neck. It took exactly 3 seconds. The massive body collapsed. The blades kept spinning, neatly rolling the hide, bone, and meat into tight bundles before sucking them into the bags. The system tallied the loot: 1,800 pounds of rhino meat, 1 horn, and 260 armor plates. Xiaoya's breathing hitched. "Senior brother, does the beast meat cost money too?" "He delivered himself to our door," I said. "Why would I pay him?" The disciples cheered, but the celebration didn't last. Deep in the mountains, the roar of the harvester had reached a dark cave. 2 blood-red eyes slowly opened. A Foundation establishment stage violent great bear stepped out, its chest heaving as it crushed a tree with 1 paw. It sniffed the dirt, locked onto the tread marks, and let out a roar that pierced the clouds. It dropped to all 4s and sprinted toward the Luoyan sect, following the trail. At the end of the mountain path, the harvester emerged from the trees, black smoke billowing. Its 3 storage bags were swollen like balloons, and half a rhino carcass was still hanging off the frame. Xiaoya started to cheer, but a roar shook the forest behind it. Leaves fell in droves, covering the path. A 30-foot-tall bear smashed through the trees, chasing the machine right to our front gate. Taiju turned pale and ditched his basket, sprinting for the courtyard. A Foundation establishment beast. "Senior brother, close the gates." Gooden dove into the woodshed, leaving half his body sticking out. Gooden yelled, "Closing the gates won't do anything. Someone kicked them into splinters yesterday." Xiaoya grabbed her abacus and ran toward me. Xiaoya cried, "Senior brother, let's go. I've got the spirit stones, forget the machine." I stayed right where I was in my broken chair. I didn't move an inch. I looked at the loaded harvester and nodded. The 3,000 stones I spent on upgrades were worth it. Herbs, meat, armor, it was all there. As for the bear chasing it, that was just a bonus. "What's the panic?" I muttered. "It's just a Foundation establishment beast. We've seen those before. The pavilion head is one too." Xiaoya stamped her feet. "But the pavilion head won't try to eat us." "How do you know?" "The pavilion cares about its reputation. This bear does too. You'll see in a minute." The bear reached the gate, smashing a crumbling wall with 1 paw. Taiju hid behind a water butt, trembling. "It's here. Senior brother, if you don't move, the machine is going to be a pancake." I looked at the control panel and pulled out a palm-sized jade command plate. "Who said I wasn't moving?" The bear glared at the harvester, drool dripping from its maw. This noisy metal box had scraped away every herb outside its cave. It had even taken the rhino the bear was saving for winter. The bear raised its right paw, gathering spiritual power for a devastating blow. I pressed my thumb into the center of the jade plate. "Enable logging overload mode." The system chimed. Power consumption tripled. The limiters on the mechanical arms vanished. The iron side shells of the harvester popped open, and the arms lunged out. The saws accelerated until they screamed, tearing the air apart. The rotation speed broke the sound barrier. The blades crossed and slammed into the descending paw. Sparks flew. The bear's roar turned into a look of pure shock. The iron tough fur it was so proud of started falling off in clumps. As soon as its spiritual energy touched the blades, the saws sliced right through its protective light. Black fur exploded into the air, drifting into our courtyard like snow. The bear jerked its paw back and stared at its naked right arm. The paw was still there, but the fur was gone. Xiaoya peeked out from behind me. "Senior brother, did he just try to curse at us?" "Maybe he's asking how much a haircut costs," I said, shaking the jade plate. "The first one is free. The rest is a full-body package." The harvester's tread spun, accelerating as it circled the bear. The mechanical arms blurred, sweeping the saws back and forth across the bear's skin. The bear lunged, but it couldn't touch the shell. It lunged left, the machine moved right. It covered its head, the saws went for its back. Huge clouds of black fur filled the sky. In less than 15 minutes, a giant, hairless bear stood shivering at our gate. Only a tiny tuft of black fur remained on the very top of its head. The harvester stopped right in front of it, hovering the blades inches away from that final patch of hair. The giant bear raised both paws to protect its head, stumbling back 3 steps. A surge of power erupted from its core, and a deep yellow spiritual light glowed on its chest. A Foundation establishment pressure swept across the courtyard, instantly pinning Wang Taiju and Li Gooden to the floor. But the harvester didn't care. It kept moving forward, its treads not even slowing down. Against absolute kinetic energy, Raw strength meant nothing. The bear looked at the machine, then at its own naked, furless arms. Its back legs buckled. The massive head pressed against the stone steps. The bear curled into a ball, paws covering its ears, and let out a soft, pathetic whimper. The courtyard went silent. Li Gooden peeked out from the woodshed, his voice trembling. "Senior brother, is he begging for mercy?" Wang Taiju took a few cautious steps forward. "Looks like it. He's even protecting that last tuft of hair on his head." Xiaoya blinked, her eyes narrowing. "Should we kill him? Bear paws sell for a lot of money." The bear shuddered violently, burying its head even deeper into the dirt. I waved my hand dismissively. "If we kill him, we only sell him once. If he stays alive, he can create value repeatedly." The bear couldn't understand my words, but it noticed the spinning saws had stopped. It started nodding frantically. I grabbed a heavy iron wrench from beside my chair. "Taiju, Gooden, how much scrap iron do we have left in the warehouse?" Taiju counted on his fingers. "About 800 pounds, plus 6 thick wooden beams." "Good. Build him a wheel." Taiju paused, looking confused. "What kind of wheel?" "A hamster wheel, just 20 times larger." Taiju looked at the bear, then at me. "Senior brother, what's a hamster?" "Something smaller than him that does the exact same job." I pulled up the system interface and spent 500 spirit stones to generate an assembly blueprint. Taiju and Gooden got to work, following the glowing projection. The bear stayed crouched by the gate, paws glued to the top of its head. Every time the harvester drifted near, the bear would nod its head in a submissive rhythm. An hour later, a massive wheel stood next to the pill refining furnace. It was 4 stories high, reinforced with iron bars, with a heavy drive shaft connected to the center. The other end of that shaft plugged directly into the energy slots of both the furnace and the harvester. Xiaoya walked around the giant contraption, looking skeptical. "Senior brother, can he really power the machines just by running? He's a Foundation establishment beast. His vitality is immense. Running 12 hours a day shouldn't be a problem." "What about the other 12 hours?" she asked. 6 for eating, 6 for sleeping," I replied. "We don't do useless overtime at Luoyun's sect." The bear's ears perked up at the word eating. I had Taiju cut 200 pounds of rhino meat and hang it just in front of the wheel. The moment the scent hit the air, the bear stood up, drool pooling on the ground. I raised the jade control plate. The harvester's saws revved up with a warning hum. "Get in." The bear didn't hesitate. It scrambled into the wheel. "Run." The bear started moving. The giant wheel groaned, then began to spin. The drive shaft let out a low whine as a surge of spiritual energy flowed through the lines and into the furnace. The dormant machine suddenly flashed with blue light. Ding! The first batch of top-grade blood chi pills rolled out of the discharge port. Xiaoya grabbed one, nearly dropping her abacus in excitement. It actually worked. "Senior brother, we don't even need spirit stones for fuel anymore." Li Gooden was pressed against the drive shaft, shouting over the noise. "The harvester is charging too. It's already sucked up the equivalent of 30 spirit stones." Hearing the cheers, the bear ran even harder. Its tongue hung out, eyes locked on the meat dangling just out of reach. I checked the energy gauge. The voltage was a bit low. I picked up a long pole and moved the meat forward another 6 inches. The bear accelerated to catch the meat, making the wheel roar. Every machine in the courtyard lit up brilliantly. Perfect. That's the speed. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Run faster, or the voltage gets unstable. 2 lines of tears rolled down the bear's face, but its 4 legs didn't dare stop. The terror of the 100,000 mountains had officially become Luoyun Sect's first biological intelligent generator. By evening, 300 bags of top-grade blood chi pills were delivered to the market. Deacon Zhao dropped the price to 7 spirit stones, and the crowd of rogue cultivators stretched down the street. Meanwhile, the 100-herb pavilion didn't sell a single mid-grade pill. Inside the pavilion's meeting hall, Sun Henian sat surrounded by shattered teacups. An employee knelt before him, drenched in sweat. "Sect leader, Luoyun Sect's output doubled today. Our blockade on the herbs didn't stop them." Sun Henian stood up abruptly. "What about the harvester? What about the raging bear?" The workers shrunk back. "The harvester is back. The bear is there too. And the bear is turning a wheel for them." The scouts say the wheel powers their pill refining. The hall went silent. Manager Qian rubbed his head, where a thin layer of stubble was just starting to grow, and quietly backed away. Sun Henian's chest heaved. He smashed a table with his bare hand. Blockades don't work. Beasts don't work. Then we kill them. He pulled out a black jade talisman and crushed it. In the back courtyard of the pavilion, a stone door that had been sealed for years slowly ground open. A gray-robed old man stepped out of the darkness, a mid-stage foundation establishment pressure filling the air. Sun Henian bowed deeply. Elder Luo, please take action. Tonight, wipe Luoyin's sect off the map. As night fell over the mountains, a violent wind whipped through our courtyard. Baskets flipped over, and sorted herbs scattered everywhere. The giant bear stopped running, the wheels spinning down with a heavy metallic groan. A streak of green sword light tore through the clouds. 2 gray-robed elders stood atop a flying sword, followed by a dozen flying boats packed with over 100 black-clad cultivators. Elder Luo, who had just come out of seclusion, stood at the back, not even daring to raise his head. The man in front of him had his hands behind his back, his robes embroidered with the hidden patterns of the 100-herb pavilion. Wang Taizhu ran out of the shed, his face turning pale. Gu Changhe, the Grand Elder of the 100-herb pavilion? Why is he here personally? Li Guden grabbed his hoe, his lips trembling. Hasn't he been in seclusion for over a decade? We just sold some pills. Is this really necessary? Xiaoya rushed to the spirit stone chest, spreading her arms to protect it. You can have the machines, but you can't have the money. This is our food budget. I sat in my chair, looking up at the sky. 1 mid-stage foundation establishment, 1 early stage, and 100 cheer-refining thugs. They really were giving us a lot of credit. The flying boats descended, and the thugs blocked every exit and wall. 100 magical artifacts lit up at once, locking onto every corner of the yard. Gu Changhe stepped off his sword, a simple flick of his sleeve sending a crushing pressure down upon us. Crack! Tieju's knees slammed into the bricks, blood trickling from his mouth. Guden's hoe snapped in two as he was pressed flat against the ground. Xiaoya swayed, spitting out a mouthful of blood, but she didn't move from the chest. The bear curled into a ball inside its wheel, clutching the last bit of fur on its head. The pill furnace groaned under the pressure. Ding! A single top-grade blood chi pill rolled out and landed at Gu Changhe's feet. He picked it up, crushing it between 2 fingers into a fine red powder. The rich aroma filled the air. Elder Luo leaned in, his eyes full of greed. Elder Gu, it's definitely top grade. Even the pill base is perfect. Gu Changhe looked down at me, his eyes cold. A broken sect using common weeds to make top-grade pills. You have some talent. Hand over the recipe and the alchemist, and I'll give you a quick death. Taizhu raised his bloody face, gripping the broken handle of his hoe. You want our machines? I rubbed my hands together, bending my spine as I hurried toward Gu Changhe with a pathetic, groveling smile. Oh, why didn't you just say so earlier, my lord? If you want the recipe, I'll give it to you. Just please, don't kill us. The entire courtyard fell into a dead, stunned silence. Gu Changhe raised a single eyebrow in surprise, and even Luo Gongfeng stood frozen for a few seconds. Sun Henian unrolled the manual I had given them. The paper was covered in crooked, bizarre symbols that looked completely alien to him. According to the text, all he had to do was pour in spiritual energy, whack the outer shell, and shout the words power on. Sun Henian finished reading, his mouth twitching twice in sheer disbelief. It could not be that simple. Gu Changhe spoke up from the side, his voice cold and steady. I watched 12 perfect blood chi pills roll out of it with my own eyes. Master Wu flipped through the manual, his face flushing a deep, angry red. He slammed it down. Absurd. Alchemy is a sacred art of balancing yin and yang, controlling fire, and nurturing the spirit of the herbs. Shoving grass inside and giving it a whack. This is an insult to our profession. Luo Gongfeng slowly opened his eyes and looked at the old alchemist. Can you refine 12 perfect pills in a single batch, Master Wu? Master Wu's lips trembled, his face turning a sickly shade of pale green. My condition today is simply not ideal. Sun Henian waved his hand to cut off the bickering. He turned his gaze toward the treasury vault. Go fetch the century-old spirit grass from our collection. The treasury manager froze at the doorway, cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. Sect leader, we only have 36 stocks left. That is the accumulated wealth of generations. Sun Henian's expression darkened instantly. If we do not risk the grass, the trail of blood stretched all the way from the Fengshe ruins to the gates of the Qingyun sect. Gu Changhe was a mess. His hair was matted with soot and gore. Both of his legs were gone from the knees down. His high-grade protective jade pendant had been reduced to literal dust. He was dragging himself forward using nothing but his fingernails, leaving a thick, crimson smear on the stone path with every agonizing inch. When the gate disciples saw him, they didn't just run, they scrambled back in pure terror to report the news. By the time the sect leader of Qingyun arrived at the main hall, Gu Changhe was barely conscious. He lunged forward, grabbing the sect leader's leg with trembling, blood-stained hands. Elder Gu, who did this to you? The sect leader cried out, his face pale. Gu Changhe lifted his head. His voice was a raspy, broken shadow of its former self. The Luoyuan sect, they are demonic cultivators. Sect leader, you must send the army. Wipe them out. Back at our sect, the smoke from the 100-herb pavilion hadn't even cleared yet, but the market was already a chaotic mess. Cultivators were huddled outside the ruins, terrified to step inside in case another explosion rocked the earth. Suddenly, a green-skinned flying boat shot out from the market, hugging the mountain peaks as it raced toward my front door. It hadn't even come to a full stop before Zhao Dezhu came rolling off the deck. He crashed through 2 bamboo baskets and finally collapsed at Old Kai's feet, clutching the legs of his chair. Master Lin, something terrible has happened. Something truly terrible. Old Kai looked down at him, unimpressed. The 100-herb pavilion is gone. What could possibly be worse than that? Zhao Dezhu was drenched in sweat. His lips wouldn't stop shaking. Zhao Dezhu was drenched in sweat. His lips wouldn't stop shaking. Gu Changhe didn't die? He crawled back to the Qingyun sect. Xiaoya leaned in, clicking her abacus. He lost his legs and still crawled 20 miles. That Foundation establishment vitality is no joke. What's he doing back there? Snitching. Zhao Dezhu wiped his face, gasping for air. He told the sect leader that Luoyuan is harboring demonic energy. He said the demonic mist swallowed hundreds of people at the pavilion. Old Kai rolled his eyes. Why didn't he mention he was trying to steal our stuff and messed with the machine? He didn't say a word about that. Zhao Dezhu slapped his thigh in frustration. And the Qingyun sect leader doesn't care. As soon as he heard the pavilion was destroyed, he called a general assembly of the entire sect. Wang Taizhu walked out of the kitchen, clutching a bag of monster meat. How many people did he call? Zhao Dezhu held up 3 fingers. 300. Taizhu asked. 3,000. The bag of meat hit the floor with a heavy thud. Li Guden poked his head out from behind the harvester's treadmill. Wait, the Qingyun sect only has about 3,100 disciples total. Except for the gate guards and the cooks, they're all coming. Zhao Dezhu swallowed hard. He pulled a crumpled list from his robe. 9 Foundation establishment elders, 3,000 outer disciples, 30 warships, and 72 array flags. The color drained from Xiaoya's face. What do they need array flags for? To move their great sect array, Zhao Dezhu's hand shook so hard the paper rattled. The sect leader tore down the mountain guarding formation. He said he's going to crush the Luoyuan sect and this entire mountain into dust. Silence fell over the courtyard. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the great bear inside the treadmill. A second later, Wang Taizhu bolted into the shed. Li Guden dropped his hoe and followed him. Xiaoya lunged for her snack box, wrapping her arms around the lid like a shield. I watched my 3 disciples scrambling in a panic. My brow furrowed. What are you doing? Taizhu ran out clutching 2 tattered blankets. Senior brother, we're packing. Guden had a heavy iron pot strapped to his back and 3 kitchen knives tucked into his belt. I'll go get the bear. We'll hitch him to the cart and run tonight. The bear heard the word, run, and immediately tried to squeeze its massive body out of the wheel. Xiaoya sat on her snack box, tears welling up. The box is too heavy. I can't lift it. We'll have to leave the pills and clothes behind. What about the machine? Taizhu shouted. Leave it. But we can't leave the snacks. I watched them, a vein throbbing in my forehead. Put everything down. They froze. The bear hesitated, then slowly backed into its wheel. I pulled out my old wrench and tossed it in my hand. 3,000 people. I looked at the lone hunter-harvester in the yard. With just one chainsaw blade, I really couldn't cut through that many people fast enough. Taiju nodded frantically. Senior brother is wise. It's not too late to run. Who said anything about running? I shot him a look. Gooden looked confused. But you just said we couldn't cut them all down. One blade can't do it. So, I'll just build something that can handle 3,000. Zhao Deju's scalp went numb. Master Lin, those are 3,000 cultivators, not 3,000 trees. So what if there are a lot of them? I tucked the wrench into my belt, my expression darkening. I've always hated it when people try to outnumber me. In my past life, if a server was overloaded, I'd have 3 backup plans ready. Looking at these 3,000 incoming enemies, I only had one thought. My firepower was insufficient. Severely insufficient. A chainsaw required the machine to run back and forth through a crowd. It was inefficient and risky. What if a stray cultivator got past it and hurt my engineers? What if they broke my furnace and delayed tomorrow's shipment? I couldn't leave that to chance. I swiped the air, opening the system interface. Blue light flooded the yard. High-risk industrial accident sample recovery complete. Equipment over-limit destruction confirmed. Calculation power generated, 12,000 points. Military-grade modules unlocked. Xiaoya forgot to cry, staring up at the floating blue text. Senior brother, the explosion at the pavilion gave us points? An accident is just data, I muttered. It's only a waste if you don't learn from it. I pressed my hand against the military module. A red warning popped up. Unlock cost, 8,000 points. Military equipment consumes massive resources. Proceed with caution? I didn't even finish reading it before hitting confirm. Military module unlocked. Automated weapon logic active. Compatible with talismans, arrays, and mechanical kinetic energy. A row of strange new icons lit up. My breathing quickened. A chainsaw wasn't real firepower. That was just for clearing brush and giving haircuts. The military module, that was true security. I closed the menu and sprinted toward the back mountain. Zhao Deju watched me go, blinking in confusion. Did he just run away first? Senior brother, wait for us. Taiju dropped his blankets and chased after me. We raced past the overgrown fields to the stone statue of our sect's founder. I pointed at the base. Taiju, dig here. Taiju held his hoe, hesitating. Senior brother, the founder's funeral offerings are buried under there. I know. Dig. Won't I get struck by lightning for stealing from the ancestor? I looked at the sky. The Qingyun sect is coming to strike us tomorrow. I think the ancestor will understand. Taiju didn't hesitate anymore. He swung the hoe, and before long, he unearthed a wooden box wrapped in oilcloth. I flipped it open. Inside were 7 yellowed talismans, each marked with a dull red flame pattern. Zhao Deju leaned in. Rank 1 explosive talismans? Luo Yun actually has these. Gooden scratched his head. The founder left those as a last resort. One of those is worth 80 snacks. Xiaoya immediately jumped to cover the box. We can't use them. 7 of these is 560 snacks. I pulled one out and held it up to the system's blue light. Who said I'm using them one by one? But it takes half a day to activate just one, Xiaoya argued. And they fail half the time. That's why manual production has no future. I grabbed the box and headed for the old, broken water wheel by the stream. Gooden, take the water wheel apart. I need the axle, the crank, and the iron pipes. Bring it all back. Gooden looked at the rotting wood. This piece of junk can fight a war. Just strip it. Stop worrying about the machine. By the time we hauled the materials back to the courtyard, the sky was beginning to brighten. I lined up 6 rusted iron pipes on the ground. Taiju, mix a pot of mud with monster oil. Gooden, saw that axle into 6 pieces. Xiaoya, go get all the yellow ledger paper the founder used for bookkeeping. My 3 disciples stood in the yard, staring at the pile of junk, having no idea that by sunrise, the world was going to meet the meaning of total saturation. Nobody moved. Xiaoya looked at me, her voice trembling. Senior brother, the enemy is coming tomorrow. I know you're stressed, but now you're breaking the water wheel and making us play with mud? Are we just making mud pies now? Taiju pulled on her sleeve, whispering loudly. Xiaoya, don't trigger him. The pressure must be getting to his head. Gooden nodded solemnly. Whatever he says, Just go along with it for now. I ignored them. Less talking, more working. Move. The three of them scrambled to finish their tasks while Zhao Daiju hovered by the gate, looking like he was ready to bolt at any second. Soon, the materials were piled high in the courtyard. I placed the single explosive talisman in the center of the 6 iron pipes and gripped the water wheel's axle. I triggered the system's military module. Blue code cascaded from the interface, sinking into the scrap metal. The 6 pipes suddenly lifted off the ground, spinning rapidly around the axle. The water wheel crank bent itself into a complex dial etched with glowing formations. The yellow ledger paper began to stitch together, rolling into a massive cylinder as tall as a person. Xiaoya clutched her abacus and backed away. Here he goes again. Can he really turn junk into snacks? Taiju stared at the rotating pipes, his throat dry. I have a feeling this thing isn't for making money. Getting rid of the people who want to rob us is a form of making money, I muttered. I poured the last of the blue energy into the axle. The system finished scanning the talisman structure. The replication program synchronized with the physical engine. A low roar filled the yard. 6 thick barrels extended forward, and the heavy iron base cracked the floor tiles under its weight. The massive paper scroll hooked onto the back, feeding yellow sheets into the slots. The barrels began to glow a dull, dangerous red. Zhao Daiju's legs gave out, and he collapsed by the gate. Master Lin, what on earth is that? This is a Gatling-style talisman printer. The 6 barrels sat heavy in the courtyard, fed by the giant roll of yellow paper. Taiju circled the machine 3 times, his face full of doubt. Senior brother, I don't feel any spiritual fluctuations from this thing. Can it really stop 3,000 men? Gooden leaned down, almost sticking his nose into the muzzle. It's just 6 fire sticks tied together. Does it even spit fire? I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back. Do you want to keep your head? Never look down the barrel of a machine, whether it's on or off. Gooden shrunk back, pointing at the paper roll. Then what's the paper for? Writing IOU notes to the Qinyan sect. Gooden, you're really better suited for starting fires in the kitchen, I sighed. Xiaoya was squatting by the machine, her abacus clicking at light speed. 6 pipes, 2 pots of monster oil, 300 sheets of paper. Senior brother, if this fails, we are going to be so poor. Zhao Daiju had 1 foot out the door. Master Lin, I'm not doubting you, but maybe we should plan an escape route. I pointed at the power treadmill. No escaping. It's time for a test run. The berserk bear had been running for 12 hours straight and was currently sprawled out, tongue lolling on the floor. When it heard the words, test run, it squeezed its eyes shut and pretended to be dead. I had Taiju bring out 300 pounds of prime rhino beef and hang it right in front of the treadmill. The scent hit the bear's nose, and its eyes popped open, drool hitting the floor instantly. Consider this over time, I said. Triple meat rations. Run this session, and you get 12 hours of sleep. The bear looked at the meat, then at the terrifying blades of the harvester nearby, and began to cry. It climbed back into the wheel. Faster. Fill the energy tank. I commanded. The bear stared at the beef and sprinted. The treadmill blurred, the drive shaft humming as spiritual energy surged through the copper pipes and into the machine. The muzzles began to glow blue. Xiaoya watched the rhino beef with a pained expression. 300 pounds? All of it for him. If it saves our snack vault, I'd give him 3,000, I replied. Xiaoya instantly turned to the bear. Senior bear, keep going. I'll personally cut the meat for you tomorrow. The bear's speed increased by 20%. The energy bar on my interface turned solid blue. The heavy base began to vibrate. I opened the wooden box and took out the last rank 1 explosive talisman. Are you sure? Xiaoya whispered, grabbing my sleeve. That's worth 80 snacks. It's just collecting dust. Today, we show the ancestors the meaning of industrial upgrades. I slid the talisman into the template slot. A metal cover snapped shut. Blue text floated above the machine. Asterisk explosive talisman template loaded. Paper reserves, 362. Energy, 100%. Replication program. Ready. Asterisk. Taiju swallowed hard. 1 talisman can really become many? In theory, as long as there's energy, it can print forever. Zhao Daiju pulled his foot back inside the gate. Master Lin, if we can print them forever, we could get rich just selling them. I glanced at him. We don't sell military hardware to the public. Not until I've checked their family history for 3 generations. I had Taiju set up my grandmaster chair behind the machine, protected by 2 thick iron plates. I sat down comfortably. Safety first. A factory director must lead by example. Senior brother, what are we hitting? Taiju asked. I looked through the gap in the armor at a barren mountain 3 miles away. It was a jagged hunk of gray rock. That mountain. Let's shave 3 meters off the top. Gooden's jaw dropped. That's a whole mountain. That's why it's perfect for a test. You can't see the true firepower by hitting a backyard wall. Zhao Dezhu suddenly turned and bolted toward the mountain pass. Wait. My carriage is parked over there. Let me move it. I'll give you a count of 10. 10, 9. Zhao Dezhu ran so fast he lost a shoe. He whipped his horse and dove into a nearby ravine just in time. Xiaoya hid behind the iron plating, her head peeking out. Taiju and Gooden braced the treadmill. The atmosphere turned cold and heavy. I pressed the red button. Infinite replication, engage. The giant paper roll began to scream as it spun. Blank sheets disappeared into the machine, emerging a split second later, glowing with blue runes. The 6 barrels began to rotate, faster and faster, until they became a blur of motion. Blue light condensed in the muzzles. The bear roared, sensing the massive energy drain, and ran like its life depended on it. I slammed the trigger. Fire! Da. 6 barrels spat half-meter-long tongues of blue spiritual flame. A stream of replicated talismans tore through the air, firing at a rate of 100 per second. They crossed the 3-mile gap in an instant. The first wave hit the mountain peak. Boom, 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 boom. Firelight erupted across the summit. Solid rock shattered into dust. But the stream didn't stop. Before the smoke could even clear, the next 100 talismans slammed into the same spot. The explosions merged into one continuous, deafening roar. Boulders were tossed into the sky, only to be vaporized by the next volley before they could even hit the ground. The massive rock face continued to shatter, grinding down into fine white powder. After 10 breaths, I finally let go of the trigger. The 6 barrels slowed their frantic spin, and the blue spiritual flames flickered out. As the dust settled 3 miles away, the mountain peak was gone. It had been leveled by 3 entire meters, leaving behind a perfectly flat cross-section of stone. Sect leader, those 10 breaths just burned through over 600 spirit stones. War is expensive, I said, though my heart twinged at the number. 600. Xiaoya hugged her abacus tighter, looking like she might cry. I ignored her and checked the machine's internal data. My brow furrowed. At 100 rounds per second, hitting 3,000 enemies with just 1 talisman each would take 30 seconds of continuous fire. Wait, 1 talisman each isn't enough. Taiju asked, sounding overwhelmed. Who said 1 was enough? I countered. We need a safety margin of at least 10 per target. If even 1 enemy leaks through, you guys get hurt. My 3 disciples stood frozen. Xiaoya looked at the empty spirit stone crate, and suddenly, she didn't seem to mind the cost anymore. I kept scanning the temperature readings, my frown deepening. The fire rate was still too slow, and with only 1 machine, the coverage was pathetic. Old Kai looked at the leveled mountain, and his lip trembled. Master Lin, you call this insufficient firepower? Suddenly, the spirit radar atop the harvester began to spin at triple speed. A piercing alarm blared through the courtyard. Warning, high-speed targets detected. Count, 100. Direction, north. Everyone looked up. 100 streaks of swordlight pierced the clouds, hovering directly over the Luoyun sect. These were the elites of the Qingyun sect, dressed in azure robes, each clutching a formation flag. Their leader looked down at our dilapidated yard and tossed a golden formation disc into the air. Listen up, Luoyun sect demon cultivators, he roared. The Qingyun sect is here to purge this place. Kneel and accept your fate. The 100 elites scattered instantly, driving their flags into the void. Heaven and Earth net formation activate. Blue spiritual lines wove across the sky, sealing every exit. A massive dome of light descended, trapping the entire sect grounds inside. The leader gripped his sword hilt, a cold sneer on his face. The mountain is sealed. Today, we catch the turtles in the jar. Don't panic. I said calmly. Start turning the screws. The blue barrier hummed, locking down the gates, the walls, and the back mountain. A stray insect flew into the barrier. The moment its wing touched the blue light, it vanished into a puff of black smoke. Old Kai saw this and tried to pull his foot back from the gate, realizing there was nowhere to run. Master Lin is truly crazy, he whispered. Even the bugs can't get out. I glanced at the system map. Every escape route was marked with a red X. The formation wasn't sophisticated, but they'd used high-quality materials. The Qingyun sect had clearly brought out their family heirlooms for this. In the sky, the leader, Du Chengfeng, glared down. He saw the leveled mountain, but he didn't see who had done it. As for the 6 iron pipes on my machine, he dismissed them as some weird, clunky artifact. Lin Yuan, come out and crawl to your death. His voice, amplified by the formation, caused the last few tiles on our roof to slide off and shatter. Taiju grabbed his hoe, his neck turning red with rage. You, Du, if you've got the guts, come down here. I'll fight you myself. Du Chengfeng glanced down and scoffed. A third-stage chi refiner? You aren't even worth my time. Taiju took a step forward, but I hooked his collar with a wrench. Get back here. Arguing with management doesn't count as billable hours. But sect leader, they're at the front door. I see them, I said. So what are we doing? Production. I walked over to the broken courtyard gate. My disciples thought I was going to face the enemy, but I just bent down and picked up 2 wooden planks. I signaled Li Gooden to strip the drive chain from the treadmill rollers. Gooden held the greasy chain, looking utterly lost. Sect leader, you're fixing the door now? The door is gone. I'm not fixing the door. I'm building an assembly line. What? I didn't explain. I pulled up the system interface. Asterisk simple transport structure detected. Modular assembly program initiated. Estimated processing power cost, 1,500 points. Asterisk. I hit confirm. Blue light washed over the planks. They snapped together, the drive chain clicking into place along the sides. I hooked the end to the bear's treadmill. A crude, wobbly conveyor belt now stretched across the yard, ending right at the warehouse door. Up in the air, Du Chengfeng's eyes narrowed. He was leading 100 elites in a siege, and his opponent was playing with scrap wood. He pushed the formation disc forward. Lin Yuan, I'll give you the time it takes for 1 incense stick to burn. Commit suicide, hand over your demon artifacts, and I'll leave your disciples' corpses intact. Fail, and 3,000 disciples will flatten this mountain. Xiaoya's face was white. She leaned toward me. Sect leader, he said suicide. Let him talk, I said. He said he'd flatten us. The yard is already flat enough. We don't need his help. Her fear flickered for a second, replaced by confusion. I threw open the warehouse doors and started dragging out everything. Scrap iron, beast scales, and the low-grade flying swords we'd confiscated. I tossed 70 swords into the salvaging bin. The blue light scanned them, stripping them down into raw components. Old Kai saw one of the swords and winced. Master Lin, that green patterned sword is worth 300 spirit stones. Now it's worth 1 mechanical leg, I replied. And that one, half a leg. Old Kai clutched his chest. The loss is too much. If you're dead, the stones belong to someone else. Which loss is bigger? Old Kai froze, then immediately grabbed 2 more swords and hurled them into the bin. Scrap them. All of them. Don't even leave the scabbards. I pulled 3 wrenches from my toolbox and shoved them into my disciples' hands. I pushed Taiju to the first station, Gooden to the second, and Xiaoya, still clutching her abacus, to the third. They sat on small wooden stools, piles of parts appearing before them on the belt. Taiju looked at the sword array looming above us, sweat dripping down his nose. Sect leader, they're going to slaughter us. I know. Then why are we holding wrenches? I pointed the old wrench at the conveyor belt. The enemy is at the gates. Your mission is simple. Turn the screws. My 3 disciples stared at me. The berserk bear poked its head out from the treadmill, looking just as confused. The formation is going to crush us in minutes, Taiju stammered. And we're building things? Machines don't grow legs by themselves, I said, grabbing 4 sword steel legs and snapping them onto an armored chassis. I tapped the joint with my wrench. Clang. Blue light flashed through the seams, sealing the joints perfectly. Runes glowed to life. The first mechanical dog chassis was complete. Its 4 short legs twitched, and the palm-sized iron lumps scurried down the conveyor belt. Tieju's mouth fell open again. It's done. Do you understand now? I asked. Not really, he admitted. Then just keep turning the screws. I assigned each of my 3 disciples a specific task on the assembly line. Wang Taiju was in charge of the legs. Li Guden handled the power slots. Xiaoya, despite her love for gold, was stuck installing the miniaturized 6-barrel Gatling launchers. Every time they finished a step, they just had to tap the part with their wrench. My system would automatically calibrate the fit. As for me, I sat back in my grandmaster's chair and supervised. The machines took all the risks, and the boss took all the credit. It felt only right. I flipped the switch on the conveyor belt. Start the engines. The berserk bear groaned, resigned to its fate, and began sprinting on the giant treadmill. The belt jerked to life with a metallic clatter. The first armored chassis slid in front of Taiju. He scrambled, grabbing a mechanical leg and slamming it into the socket. Clang. Guden grabbed the base next, stuffing 3 spirit snacks into the energy slot. Clang. Xiaoya lifted a 6-barrel launcher, aligning it with the back mount and pressing down. Clang. A mechanical dog hopped off the end of the belt. Its 6 short barrels swiveled upward in unison. Combat Unit Number 1 was online. It actually moves. Xiaoya reached out to touch it, but the next chassis was already in front of her. I pointed my wrench at her. Focus, CFO. No daydreaming on the clock. Understood. The rhythmic clink-clank of metal echoed far beyond our walls. Outside the gate, the 100 elites of the Qingyun sect paused. Confusion washed over their faces. Du Chengfeng stepped forward, his voice booming with arrogance. Lin Yuan, your time is up. Get out here and die. No one answered. Instead, the hammering inside the yard grew faster. Clang, 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 clang. Taiju had found his rhythm. He wasn't fumbling anymore. Left hand set the leg, right hand dropped the wrench. 3 breaths per unit. Guden didn't even look up. He just jammed the power cells in and struck. Xiaoya was the fastest of all, counting out loud as each machine hit the floor. 48, 49, 50. She wiped sweat from her brow. Sect leader, we have 50 units. The mechanical dogs formed a square formation, their barrels tracking the sky in sync with the radar. Old Kai stood nearby, frantically reloading yellow paper rolls into the hoppers. His robes were stained with grease, and his teeth were gritted in terror. He looked at the massive sword formation looming above us, and threw 2 more crates of spirit snacks onto the pile. Boss, I've put my entire private stash into this. My life depends on how fast you can load these. I got it, Old Kai shouted, stuffing paper rolls into the dogs' backs as fast as his hands could move. The insults from outside grew louder, but the hammering inside grew more intense. They called us cowards. They called us turtles hiding in a shell. Taiju swung his wrench one last time, a grim smile on his face. Keep barking. I'm just giving you more barrels to look at. By the time the 100th mechanical dog came online, the conveyor belt was literally smoking. I grabbed a bucket of beast oil and doused the chain, pushing the speed even higher. When we hit 200, we ran out of scrap metal. Old Kai, strip the side armor off the harvester. Break it down into 60 more chassis. Xiaoya watched the harvester get stripped with a twitching lip. Sect leader, won't the machine leak air if we strip it? We'll call it a workplace injury and fix it after the fight. Keep moving. 279, 280, 299. The final set of parts slid down the belt. 3 wrenches fell in perfect succession. Clang. The 300th mechanical dog hopped into the formation. Xiaoya stood among them, exhausted. 300 6-barrel launchers tilted upward, locking onto the sky. She collapsed onto her stool, unable to lift her arms. Taiju and Guden leaned against the smoking belt, their palms covered in bloody blisters. I reached into a snack box, pulled out 6 spirit stones, and tossed 2 to each of them. Overtime bonus. Xiaoya bolted upright, eyes gleaming. Sect leader, I can build 300 more. The greed was real. Outside, the last inch of the incense stick crumbled into ash. Du Qingfeng's face was dark. He had been screaming insults for an hour, and I hadn't given him a single word in return. To him, I wasn't just hiding. I was treating him like a common servant knocking on a door. Fine. You want to die in there? So be it. Du Chengfeng slammed his hands onto his formation plate. Everyone, activate the heavens net. Kill them all. 100 elites raised their formation flags. Lights surged toward the sky, tearing open thousands of cracks in the clouds. From those cracks, long swords made of pure spiritual energy materialized. A forest of blades pointed directly at my sect. The cold glint of steel covered the entire mountain. Old Kai looked up, his legs turning to jelly. Boss, the sword rain is coming. Du Chengfeng roared, execute. Thousands of spirit swords plummeted. The sky turned a blinding shade of green. Taiju and the others dove behind iron shields. Even the berserk bear curled into a ball, covering its head. I sat back in my chair and took a slow sip of cold tea. 300 mechanical dogs deployed their stabilizers. 6,000 barrels began to spin. I blew the floating tea leaves aside and whispered one word. Fire. The red lights in the dogs' eyes flashed. Their heads tilted back in perfect unison. Their metal legs braced against the stone floor. A synchronized, synthesized voice echoed through the courtyard, target locked. Du Chengfeng was still grinning as his swords breached the outer barrier. The tips were only 30 feet from our walls. Taiju squeezed his eyes shut. Sect leader, are you sure we shouldn't hide in the woodshed? I didn't even move my butt from the chair. The woodshed leaks when it rains. Why bother? But they're right over our heads. Don't worry, I said, taking another sip. Let the machines finish their protocol first. Gooden peeked out from behind a shield. Will we still be alive when the protocol is finished? I watched the barrels reach maximum RPM. The guys on the other side? Probably not. The next second, the world exploded. 1,800 barrels roared at once. The recoil blew the dust off the ground and shook the remaining tiles off the roof. The yellow paper rolls spun like crazy. As the blank talismans hit the slots, fire runes etched themselves onto the paper instantly. 30,000 explosive talismans per minute. A wall of red light surged upward, meeting the sword rain head-on. The first talisman hit a spirit sword. Boom! The blade shattered. Then, hundreds more followed. A sea of fire swallowed half the sky. The spirit swords didn't even last 2 breaths before they were pulverized into sparks. The fire didn't stop there. The talismans punched through the remnants of the swords and slammed into the underside of the heaven's net. The giant golden dome shuddered. 100 formation flags began to wail. Du Qingfeng's grin froze. His hands began to shake on the control plate. What kind of treasure is this? Talismans, one of his disciples screamed, stumbling back. They're shooting explosive talismans. Nobody uses talismans like that. Block it. Hold the formation. The elites scrambled, pouring every ounce of spiritual power they had into the net. They had spent decades cultivating. They had seen sword arrays and ancient spells. But they had never seen anyone throw 10,000 talismans at once. Each one cost 80 spirit stones. In just a few seconds, I had fired away a fortune that could buy a small city. Du Chengfeng bit his tongue, spitting blood onto his formation plate to stabilize it. Don't panic. We have the high ground. They can't break the net. The green shield thickened. 3 layers of protection formed in front of the elites. Du Chengfeng let out a small breath of relief. I set my teacup down and picked up the control jade. Anti-air mode finished. Switch to full area saturation. Clear the field. 300 mechanical dogs lowered their muzzles. The spinning barrels swept across the horizon, leveling out until they were pointed directly at the 100 Qingyun elites. Du Qingfeng's pupils shrunk. Cold sweat drenched his forehead in an instant. I could see them through the formation. My spirit radar had every single one of them locked. The cultivators beside Du Qingfeng began to panic. One of them summoned a protective eye-shaped artifact, but his voice was trembling. He can see us through the array. Senior Du, we have to pull back. This isn't right. Retreat? To where? Du Chengfeng snapped, his face twisted. We blocked the exits ourselves. Open the formation. The control plate was in Du Qingfeng's hands. He fumbled with it, his fingers shaking so hard, he couldn't even form the necessary hand seals. To make sure my sect couldn't escape, he had locked the great net from the inside. Reversing it would take at least 10 breaths of time. I didn't give him 10 breaths. I picked up a wrench and gave a casual wave toward the mechanical dog formation. Gentlemen, times have changed. The red lights in the eyes of the 300 mechanical dogs flared with a blinding intensity. The clearance protocol initiated. Range confirmed. Friend or foe identification complete. Xiaoyu was hiding behind a crate of snacks, her fingers flying across her abacus. Senior brother, how many spirit stones are we burning in this round? Don't count, I said, staring ahead. It'll ruin my mood. I'm the treasurer. I have to count. I sighed and lifted my teacup to my lips. Fine. Tell me after the fight. She didn't wait. Her fingers clicked against the beads. 2 stones per second per unit. 300 units. That's 600 stones every second. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my thumb down on the trigger. Fire. The roar returned to Luo Yun's sect, louder than before. 300 snakes of fire hissed into the sky. A literal wall of explosive talismans blanketed every inch of the heaven's net. The first layer of the golden dome lasted half a breath. It shattered. He brought us here. The plea was drowned out by the thunder of the guns. Du Chengfeng stepped onto his flying sword, desperate to climb higher. He threw out 3 high-grade protective charms, wrapping himself in 3 layers of golden light. He made it 30 feet up before 30 mechanical dogs adjusted their muzzles in perfect unison. The fire concentrated. The first golden layer cracked in a heartbeat. The second shattered a second later. By the third, there was only a sea of fire. Du Chengfeng looked down at his jade amulet. It was vibrating, then it snapped. How is this possible? The next volley hit him directly. An explosion rocked the sky, and Du Chengfeng was gone. From the moment the protocol started to the moment the last formation flag fell from the sky, only 9 breaths had passed. 100 Qingyun elites had simply ceased to exist. A soft wind blew through the mountain, carrying fine gray ash that settled on the broken courtyard walls. The mechanical dogs stopped firing. Their barrels glowed dull red, cooling slowly. Aerial targets cleared. The system voice droned. Ammunition remaining, 63%. Awaiting next command. The courtyard went silent. Wang Taizhu peeked out from behind a metal shield and stared at the empty sky for a long time. Where did they go? Li Guden, holding his recently reset jaw, pointed at the drifting ash. Probably over there. The raging giant bear, still tucked inside its treadmill, looked at the mechanical dogs and started running again. It didn't wait to be told. It just kept charging the batteries, its eyes wide with terror. Deacon Zhao crawled out from behind some armor, his legs turning to jelly. He looked at the sky, then at me. Master Lin, that was 100 elites. They are all gone. The machine says they're cleared, I replied. You want to fly up there and count them? Zhao shook his head frantically. He grabbed a crate of yellow paper and started reloading the machines. I'll just stick to the ammo. I'm definitely staying on ammo duty. Xiaoyu finally finished her calculations. Her face was a mix of joy and physical pain. Senior brother, 9 breaths. We just burned 5,400 spirit stones. My tea stayed halfway to my mouth. How much? 5,400. Not a stone less. I stared toward the horizon, toward the Qingyun sect. Write it down. Put it on their tab. Add a 30% service fee for the cleanup. 5 miles north of the sect, a bush rustled. A lone Qingyun disciple crawled out, fumbling with his belt. He'd had a stomach ache and had stayed behind the main group to find a ditch. He'd heard the noise, but he hadn't dared to look. Senior Du should be done by now, he muttered. He looked up. The words died in his throat. The sky was empty. Not a single scrap of clothing remained of his 100 brothers. His legs gave out, and he slid into the mud. Gone, they're all gone. He scrambled out of the ditch, didn't even bother tying his pants, and jumped on his flying sword. He wobbled through the air, nearly hitting the cliffside 3 times as he fled back to his sect. An hour later, in the great hall of the Qingyun sect, sect leader Zhou Wanshan sat on his throne. 9 Foundation establishment elders stood by his side. 3,000 disciples were gathered outside, waiting for the news of our destruction. The doors burst open. The lone disciple rolled into the hall, his forehead hitting the stone steps. He started wailing immediately. Sect leader, Senior Du is gone. Zhou Wanshan stood up abruptly. What do you mean, gone? 100 brothers. all turned to ash by the iron dogs. Nonsense. An elder grabbed the boy by his collar, hoisting him into the air. The heaven's net can stop an army. What does Luo Yun have that could break it? The disciple was sobbing, his legs kicking at the air. 300 dogs. They all shoot explosive talismans. Thousands of them in a blink. Senior Du didn't even get to finish his sentence before he was vaporized. The hall went deathly silent. Zhou Wanshan's chest heaved. He gripped the armrest of his throne. Crack. The wood turned to splinters under his hand. By my order, he growled. Every single disciple is to move out. The 9 elders looked up in shock. Zhou Wanshan grabbed the sect token from the wall and headed toward the back mountain. Wake the guardian beast. I will personally level the Luo Yun sect to the ground. The gates of the Qing Yun sect swung wide. 30 war vessels surged through the clouds, drums beating a rhythm of war. Behind them, 3,000 disciples on flying swords followed, their green robes forming a literal sea in the sky. Their swords pointed toward my mountain, their spiritual light illuminating the land for miles. At the very front, a massive golden whale beast stepped through the air. Mist swirled around its 4 legs, and a single golden horn protruded from its head. With every step, a ripple of blue energy pulsed through the sky. Zhou Wanshan sat on the beast's back, his robes billowing in the wind. 3 flying swords hummed at his waist. Seal the area for 100 miles, he commanded, his voice trembling with rage. No one leaves Luo Yun's sect alive. The roar of 3,000 sword cultivators answered him. The sound rolled over the mountains, sending birds scattering in every direction. A movement this big couldn't be hidden. The owner moved his tables and chairs onto the roof. Thousands of rogue cultivators gathered on the hilltops and on flying boats, following the Qing Yun army at a safe distance. Some were recording with jade slips. Others were already taking bets. How long will Luo Yun last? Minimum bet, 10 spirit stones. Half a stick of incense, one man shouted. I bet they last half a stick of incense. You're being too generous to Lin Yuan, another laughed. Once the Qing Yun Grand Array opens, that mountain is getting flattened in a single strike. Down in the market, one of the workers I'd placed there watched the sky and reached for a communication talisman. It was time. I scrambled through the crowd, pushing and shoving my way toward the exit. Move. Get out of the way. I shouted. I have to get back and warn him. A rogue cultivator grabbed my arm, pulling me back. Warn him about what? Look up, kid. 3,000 sword cultivators are hovering right over his head. You think Lin Yuan is deaf? Another man nearby pocketed his spirit stones and lowered his voice. He managed to wipe out the 100-herb pavilion. Maybe he's got one last trick up his sleeve. Trick? Don't be stupid. The first man laughed, gesturing toward the sky. Look at the beast the sect leader is riding. That's a tier 3 golden-horned water beast. Even a golden core expert would take the long way around to avoid that thing. This time, not even the gods can save Lin Yuan. Back at the Luo Yun sect, the atmosphere was chaotic, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Wang Taizhu came sprinting out of the woodshed, clutching a large bamboo sunshade. Sect leader, I got the umbrella, but the leg is a bit bent. Prop it up with a rock, I said, not looking up from my work. Just don't let it fall on my head. I was sitting in a grand armchair, carefully winding copper wire around a pair of dark glass lenses. Li Guden ran over carrying 3 low tables, sweat pouring down his face. Where do you want the snacks? Next to the mechanical dogs? Keep them by my hand, I told him. War is war, but don't get crumbs in the artillery bay. Xiaoya emerged from the kitchen dragging a wooden bucket that emitted a chilling white mist. Sect leader, the iced plum soup is ready. How many spirit stones should I charge per bowl? It's free for our people, I said. Xiaoya stopped in her tracks, her face twisting with physical pain at the thought of lost profit. What about the people watching from the hills? 10 stones a bowl. It's a war zone. We're marking it up 500%. Xiaoya's eyes lit up. She immediately turned back toward the kitchen. I'm going to add 2 more buckets of water to the mix. Wang Taizhu finished setting up the umbrella and glanced nervously toward the north. A massive wave of sword light was already cresting over the mountain peaks. The silhouettes of the war galleons were becoming terrifyingly clear. The bamboo pole in his hand shook, causing the umbrella to wobble. Sect leader, Are we really not going to reinforce the mountain array? I hooked the copper wire behind my ears, my homemade sunglasses finally shielding my eyes from the glare. We have a mountain array? Wang Tieju's lip twitched. The ancestors left one behind. But we dismantled the components to sell for gambling credits last year. Then there's nothing to reinforce, is there? I shrugged. But there are so many of them. Taiju pointed at the sky, his voice tight. A few days ago it was 100. Today it's 3,000. They're so thick I can't even see the clouds. Li Gooden set the plate of melon seeds on the table, his legs visibly trembling. The dogs can take out 100. But how long will it take to fight 3,000? I grabbed a handful of seeds and cracked one open. As long as the equipment doesn't break, how long we fight depends entirely on how long the other side can hold out. Xiaoya brought over the plum soup, still looking worried. Do we have enough spirit stones for fuel? I went through the storage bags we took from Du Qingfeng yesterday, I said. Found about 80,000 stones. I stuffed them all into the power cells. 80,000. The wooden spoon in Xiaoya's hand hit the side of the bucket with a loud clack. Sect leader, that's our money. Now it's called a national defense budget. Can we get a refund? If the enemy retreats early, we might save a portion. Xiaoya turned her gaze toward the 3,000 cultivators descending upon us, her worry instantly replaced by pure rage. The Qingyun sect has gone too far. Fighting a war is one thing, but burning through my spirit stones? Unforgivable. Behind the courtyard walls, 300 mechanical dogs stood in neat rows. Their chassis had been reinforced with heavy plating, and each one now carried a square iron box on its back, protected by thick armor. Wang Taiju had helped with the modifications last night, but he still didn't understand what the boxes were for. He leaned in close to me. Sect leader, what's actually inside those new units? An upgraded after-sales service, I replied. Service for who? I spat out a seed shell. Whoever pays the bill gets the service. And right now, the Qingyun sect owes us 5,400 spirit stones. As the words left my mouth, a crushing pressure descended from the sky. The bamboo umbrella groaned and bent under the weight of the spiritual aura. The tables rattled violently. Wang Tieju's knees buckled, and he had to grab the edge of the table to stay upright. Li Gooden hugged the plum soup bucket, but half a bowl still splashed out onto the dirt. Xiaoya looked up at the Tier 3 beast and turned pale. Sect leader, can the dogs beat that giant monster? One-on-one. No, I answered quickly. My 3 disciples all stared at me in horror. I reached up and straightened my sunglasses. But we aren't fighting one-on-one. We're fighting 300-on-1. You have to utilize numerical superiority. The golden-horned water beast halted directly above the Luoyun sect, its 4 feet treading on clouds of mist. Zhou Wanshan looked down at our broken-down courtyard. His eyes swept over the sunshade, the melon seeds, and the plum soup. His cheeks twitched with mounting fury. The Qingyun sect had brought 3,000 cultivators to his doorstep, and Lin Yuan was sitting there drinking plum soup? Lin Yuan. Zhou Wanshan stepped onto the head of his beast, pointing his sect leader's token at us. You used demonic energy to harm the 100-herb pavilion and lured 100 of my disciples to their deaths. How dare you continue this pathetic charade? I picked up my wooden bowl and took a slow sip of the cold soup. Du Qingfeng brought his men to block my door. I could hardly be expected to pay them a salary for the inconvenience, could I? Sophistry, Zhou Wanshan roared. He waved his arm, and the 3,000 sword cultivators immediately shifted positions. The 30 war galleons spread out to the flanks. 9 Foundation establishment elders took their places at the formation nodes. Activate the Qingyun Immortal Slaying Array. 3,000 flying swords shot into the sky simultaneously. Their lights linked end to end, and a massive surge of spiritual energy gathered above our heads. The clouds were shoved aside as a 100-meter-long giant sword slowly materialized in the air. The blade hadn't even descended yet, but the ground behind our sect was already cracking. The courtyard wall groaned and collapsed halfway. The giant bear we kept as a pet grabbed the fur on its head and scrambled to hide under a heavy stone roller. In the distance, the spectators fled. Several flying boats turned around and raced 10 miles away to escape the blast radius. The immortal slaying sword is out. They're going to split the entire mountain in half. Run. If you stay here, you won't even have ashes left to bury. In the courtyard, My 3 disciples were frantically dragging the tables behind a set of armored plates. Sect leader, should we take the umbrella? Take it, I said. I just got the shade right. Don't waste it. What about the soup? Take that too. If you spill another bowl, I'm docking your pay. Xiaoya gripped the bucket so hard her knuckles turned white, her fears suddenly replaced by financial focus. Zhou Wanshan watched the farce below, the veins in his forehead bulging. Lin Yuan, those who seek the Tao should fear the heavens. You rely on cheap tricks and mechanical toys to mass-produce demonic energy and disrupt the market. You have defiled the great path of cultivation. I pulled the plate of melon seeds into my lap and looked up at the 100-meter sword. The great path. I pushed my sunglasses up the bridge of my nose. Does your path increase production capacity? Does it mean I don't have to work overtime? Zhou Wanshan's face turned a violent shade of crimson. The token in his hand erupted with blinding green light. Ignorant fool, you aren't fit to be a cultivator. Funny, I muttered, leaning back into my armchair. A small smirk played on my lips. I never planned on being one. I'm just the operator. Die. Zhou Wanshan thrust his arms downward. The massive sword tore through the atmosphere, plunging toward the Luoyun sect. The pressure was so intense the floor tiles began to shatter into dust. But at that exact moment, 300 mechanical dogs raised their heads in unison. I lifted my right hand and snapped my fingers. System activated. Deploy micro-spiritual radar network. Initiate full auto-target locking and saturated strike. The armored plates on the backs of the 300 dogs flipped open simultaneously. Rows of micro-rocket launchers rose from the boxes, their dense warheads swiveling toward the sky. The era of standing in lines to get shot was over. As the giant sword reached within 30 feet of us, the 300 iron boxes glowed with a fierce blue light. Spiritual nodes locked. Tracking type spiritual rockets, launch. I pressed the button on my control jade and grabbed another handful of seeds. Dismantle the big sword first. I don't want it falling on the factory floor. Asterisk whoosh. 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 Asterisk. Thousands of rockets shrieked out of the launchers. Blue exhaust trails instantly filled the sky above the Luoyun sect. The first wave didn't hit the sword head-on. Instead, they swerved, circling toward the hilt. The second wave climbed higher, flipping midair once they cleared the blade. The third wave skimmed the underside of the giant sword, heading straight for the formation's energy nodes. Zhou Wanshan saw the sky turn blue, and the rage on his face froze into confusion. What are those things? One of the Foundation establishment elders raised his formation flag, his voice trembling. Sect leader, they aren't hitting the sword. They're chasing the formation nodes. Intercept them. Zhou Wanshan screamed. Flying swords out. Block them now. Hundreds of flying swords broke rank to meet the incoming barrage. But the front row of rockets performed a sharp, high G turn, weaving through the gaps. The remaining thousands stayed locked on their targets. The Qingyun sect disciples were staring, completely stunned. My rockets didn't just fly straight. They curved, tracking targets like they had a mind of their own. It's raining men, someone yelled. Move. Don't let the Qingyun disciples crush you. Hundreds of cultivators crashed into the hillsides, tree canopies, and mud pits. The air was filled with a symphony of screams. Wang Taizhu peeked out from behind a metal shield, pointing at the sky. Senior brother, that giant sword? It's gone. Yeah, I said, spitting out a sunflower seed shell. Bad structural design. Terrible impact resistance. Li Guden licked his lips and asked, what about those 3,000 people? Will they run away? If they run, we don't have to burn any more spirit stones, right? Xiaoya clutched her abacus, looking hopeful. I was about to nod when I saw Zhou Wanshan rip 3 flying swords from his belt. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had squeezed his sect token so hard it was covered in cracks. Qingyun disciples, hear my command, he roared. Lin Yuan's weapons are limited. Charge with me. Whoever kills Lin Yuan gets 100,000 spirit stones and a seat as a sub-elder. The mention of 100,000 stones silenced the chaotic army instantly. A few inner disciples were the first to activate their protective artifacts. They figured my weapons needed time to reload. They thought if they just rushed in, they'd win by sheer numbers. Kill Lin Yuan. Seize the magic weapons. 3,000 sword cultivators regrouped, lowering their swords for a dive. Zhou Wanshan, riding his green-water golden whale beast, led the 9 Foundation establishment elders straight toward my sect. Behind them, a sea of green robes flooded the sky, layer upon layer of sword light pressing down. The numbers were intimidating. Old Kai clutched his rolls of yellow paper, his legs shaking again. Master, they're really using human lives to fill the gap. Should we launch another round of rockets? Save the rockets for big targets, I said, waving him off. Wang Taizhu watched the approaching swarm, his throat tight. Then how do we stop them? I raised my control jade. The iron boxes on the backs of the 300 mechanical dogs retracted. In their place, 1,800 gun barrels rose into the air. I let out a small smirk. The era of standing in lines to get shot was over. Now crossfire was in style. The 300 mechanical dogs scattered, taking high ground on the gate, the walls, and the back mountain. They divided into groups of 100, each covering a specific slice of the sky. Their muzzles locked onto every possible charging route. Master, how much does one round cost? Xiaoya asked, squeezing her abacus. Don't ask about the price right now, I told her. It's bad for morale. But I'm the chief financial officer. Then close your eyes while you calculate it. I pressed the red button. Fire. The roar of the guns instantly drowned out the battle cries. 1,800 barrels spun in unison. A dense torrent of explosive talismans swept across the 3 zones of fire. The first wave of Qingyun disciples had barely crossed the 500-meter mark when they slammed into a wall of paper and fire. Dozens of protective artifacts lit up. Boom, boom, boom. The artifacts lasted barely half a breath before their formation lines were shredded. The cultivators in front tried to veer off, but the side fire immediately filled the gap. If they went left, 100 dogs opened up. If they went right, the muzzles tracked them perfectly. If they went up, tracking rockets were waiting under the clouds. If they went down, 60 dogs were waiting at the main gate. Wherever they moved, the explosions followed. Don't push. There's fire everywhere. The people behind are still charging. I can't stop. Who stepped on my flying sword? Give me a protection talisman. Quick. 80 spirit stones for 1. Pay up first. We're going to die, and you're still charging me. 3,000 people were jammed together. Flying swords collided. Formations fell apart. One man who had practiced movement techniques for 30 years tried to change direction 7 times. 7 layers of fire tracked him every step of the way, leaving him no room to breathe. Another tried to launch a massive sword chi blast, but the moment it left his weapon, it was torn to shreds by hundreds of talismans. It didn't matter how many decades they had spent cultivating. In the face of total fire saturation, their realm, their movement, and their intent were all just expensive jokes. I adjusted the aim again, pushing the fire toward the rear of the retreating crowd. The Qingyun disciples stopped caring about their sect's dignity. They threw away their flags and weapons. Stop shooting. I quit the Qingyun sect. I'm just a cook. Even this sword is a rental. Zhou Wanshan, you've ruined us. 30 warships scrambled to turn around. 2 of them collided midair. Disciples screamed as they jumped overboard, only to be knocked into the valley by retreating flying swords. In less than 5 minutes, the Qingyun army had completely collapsed. 3,000 cultivators were running for their lives, leaving the hillside covered in green robes, weapons, and storage bags. The rogue cultivators in the distance couldn't even speak. The Qingyun elites they used to look up to were now crawling through the mud just to survive. My sect hadn't even drawn a single sword. 300 machines had ground the pride of these immortals into the dirt. Xiaoya's eyes sparkled as she looked at the mountain of storage bags. Master, those count as spoils of war, right? I calmly raised the rod and poked it right against the tip of its nose. Activating 3 million volt sedation mode. ZZZZT. Purple lightning surged into the beast's nostrils, instantly enveloping its entire body. The massive creature went rigid. All 4 of its legs left the ground at once. Black smoke billowed from its golden horn, and its green scales stood up one by one like needles. Zhou Wanshan was still sitting on the beast's back. He didn't even have time to try and escape before the purple arcs traveled up the reins and slammed into his body. Man and beast convulsed in perfect harmony. Zhou Wanshan's hair stood straight up on end, and his sect leader robes began to smoke. After about 10 seconds, I let go of the button. The green-water golden whale beast collapsed with a thunderous crash, its eyes rolling back into its head as white foam bubbled from its mouth. Zhou Wanshan was launched off the creature's back like a rag doll, his head getting stuck perfectly in a gap in the courtyard wall. The courtyard went silent. Xiaoya crouched behind the armor plating, clutching her abacus, her lips trembling. Sect leader, is he dead? The breaker tripped, I said, picking up an old wrench. I gave the beast's horn a light tap. Clang. Just waiting for him to reboot. The beast's forelegs twitched. Its eyes slowly rolled back into place. It looked up at me and let out a low, menacing growl. I immediately moved my thumb back toward the button on the shock batten, ready to increase the pressure. The beast shut its mouth instantly. It tucked its claws under its belly, pressed its head against my armchair, and started wagging its tail furiously. Then, it stuck out its tongue to lick my shoe. I pulled my foot back. Don't lick that. If the leather gets ruined, who's paying for the workers' comp? The beast let out a pathetic whimper, rolled over to show its belly, and hugged the shock batten with its front paws. Wang Taiju was staring, completely dumbfounded. This was the guardian beast of the Qingyun sect, reduced to a house pet. Li Guden took a cautious step forward. Does he want you to zap him again? Is he trying to apply for a transfer? I ignored them and took out a wooden plaque. I hung it around the beast's neck. On the front, big bold letters read, Luoyuan Industrial Group, Transport Department, Mount Number 1. Deep in the workshop, the raging bear poked its head out from under its power-generating wheel. When it saw the plaque, it started running twice as fast. The new guy had already made it to the transport department. The bear knew it couldn't afford to lose its spot in the power department. Master Lin, Zhou Wanshan is still alive. Zhao Dechu pointed toward the wall, his voice buzzing with excitement. Zhou Wanshan's legs were dangling outside the wall. They had been twitching a second ago, but now they were perfectly still. I raised the shock batten and shook it at him. Playing dead counts as one unexcused absence. Voltage doubles for the next round. Immediately, the sound of crumbling bricks echoed from the wall. Zhou Wanshan pulled his head out, face covered in dust, and scrambled to kneel before my chair. Thud! He knelt so hard the floor tiles cracked. Sect leader Lin. A mistake. This was all a misunderstanding. I adjusted my sunglasses. You brought 3,000 men to blockade my front door. You call that a misunderstanding? It was Gu Chang'e. He instigated everything. He told me you were a demonic cultivator. I was deceived. Zhou Wanshan began slapping his own face, the cracks echoing through the air. I was foolish. I was blind. I am guilty. Please, just treat me like a fart and let me go. The Qingyun sect will compensate you. Anything you want. I raised a hand to stop him. Fine. Employee injuries are a loss for the group. Keep your face intact so you can work. Zhou Wanshan's face lit up with joy. Thank you for your mercy, sect leader Lin. Spirit stones, pills, treasures, take whatever you want. I never force a sale. Zhou Wanshan stared at the barrels. His throat bobbed. I'm doing this voluntarily. I like the attitude. Keep reading. Zhou Wanshan's hands trembled as he flipped to page 77. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. All disciples will have 0 base salary, 0 holidays, and a 7-day rotating shift, the 007 system. Until the war reparations are paid off, that's the standard, I said. I took a bowl of sour plum soup from Xiaoya. Once the debt is clear, we'll move to normal hours. I don't like my employees working too much overtime. Zhou Wanshan's lips quivered. How long will it take to pay it off? Xiaoya clicked her abacus a few times. Damage to property, ammunition costs, beverages, and mental compensation. It comes to 2.8 million spirit stones. Zhou Wanshan almost collapsed. 2.8 million? The Qingyun sect doesn't have that much. That's why I'm acquiring you. Without production capacity, how do you expect to pay your debts? I took a sip of my soup and pointed to the last page. Sign it and we'll feed you. You'll even get a base salary of 3 spirit stones a month. Zhou Wanshan looked up, his face full of grief and indignation. I am the sect leader of Qingyun. 3 spirit stones a month. I looked at Wang Taiju. When Taiju started, he didn't get a single one. Wang Taizhu puffed out his chest. Now I get 10 a month. Plus overtime pay. Li Guden nodded beside him. And the beast meat in the cafeteria is unlimited. It's way better than digging for wild vegetables. Looking at their satisfied faces, Zhou Wanshan felt a sharp pain in his chest. He flipped to the very last page, where a breach of contract clause was written. Anyone leaving without permission will owe the group 10 million spirit stones and undergo a 3 million volt vocational training session. Zhou Wanshan glanced at the shock baton. The beast next to him immediately covered its own head with its paws. I handed the brush back to him. Signature or voltage? 2 lines of tears rolled down Zhou Wanshan's cheeks. He bit his finger and pressed his bloody thumbprint onto the end of the agreement. A blood-red light raced through all 100 pages before sinking into his forehead. The merger blood pact was sealed. The ownership of the Qingyun sect had officially changed. The Luoyun Industrial Group's Qingyun branch was born. In the distance, the remaining Qingyun disciples saw the flash of the blood pact. The last bit of their will to fight evaporated. Flying swords, arrayed discs, and treasures were tossed aside. Cries for mercy echoed across the mountain. We surrender. Don't shoot. I'm willing to enter the factory. Just give me a meal. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Zhao Dezhu yelled. He scrambled up a half-collapsed courtyard wall, waving the employee registration ledger over his head. Form a line. Hand over your storage bags first, then register your specialty. Alchemists to the left. Blacksmiths to the right. If you don't have a skill, go move bricks. Lu Xiaoya and Wang Taizhu charged toward the spoils of war. The clicking of her abacus quickly drowned out the sounds of sobbing disciples. 3 spirit veins. 27 medicinal fields. 6 storefronts. Lu Xiaoya shouted, her eyes gleaming. Senior brother, we finally have real factory space. I checked the system interface. The asset numbers were spinning upward like a slot machine. I tucked my shock baton away, feeling satisfied. I was finally done running production out of a leaky, broken-down shack. The golden-eyed water beast, once the pride of the Qingyun sect, trotted over to my grandmaster's chair. It lowered its massive head, waiting for its new master to mount up. I stood up from the chair and stretched my back. Let's go, I said. Time to inspect our new branch office. The Qingyun sect headquarters. The beast stepped onto a cloud of mist, carrying me past the sect gates. Behind us, 300 mechanical dogs marched in perfect formation, their 6-barreled launchers aimed outward. The hunter-harvester brought up the rear, its heavy treads grinding the earth. Along the path, the remaining Qingyun disciples kept their heads down. They were even afraid to breathe too loudly. Zhou Wanshan walked beside the beast. His sect leader robes were torn in a dozen places, and his face was smeared with dust. He looked up at his former mount, his lip twitching. The beast was now wearing a wooden transport tag around its neck, looking more energetic than it ever had during the 700 years it served him. I patted the beast's neck. Good ride. I just haven't calculated the fuel consumption yet. Sect leader Lin. He eats spirit fruits, Zhou Wanshan whispered cautiously. At least 300 pounds per meal. Lu Xiaoya, who was trailing behind with her abacus, snapped her head up. That expensive? Can we return him for a refund? The beast's ears twitched. It froze mid-step, all 4 legs trembling. I raised my shock baton slightly. No refunds. But we can arrange for him to handle heavy freight deliveries. The more he works, the more he eats. The beast saw the purple electricity flickering on the tip of the baton and immediately doubled its pace. Zhou Wanshan looked down, his eyes filled with sudden pity for his old friend. We reached the main gate. I raised my hand, signaling the column to stop. The Qingyun sect gate was 30 feet tall, held up by 2 white jade pillars supporting a massive bronze plaque. 2 stone dragons were carved into the pillars, winding their way toward the sky. Wang Taizhu stared up at it for a long time. Senior brother, this gate is fancy. It's worth way more than our old wall. A flicker of pride touched Zhou Wanshan's chest. This gate was built by our 3rd-generation ancestor. It has stood for 600 years. I pulled out my system interface and measured the width. Then I frowned. The entrance is only 20 feet wide. My trucks won't fit. And the threshold is too high. My workers will have to take 300 extra steps every time they unload cargo. Zhou Wanshan's smile froze. The gate isn't for cargo. It will be, I said. But the steps and the plaque are protected by ancient arrays, Zhou Wanshan stammered. Tearing them down would be. I waved a hand toward the back of the line. Little harvester, level it. The hunter harvester roared to life. Its giant saw blade spun up, whistling through the air. Zhou Wanshan lunged forward, spreading his arms to block the stairs. Wait, this was left by the ancestors. The harvester kept moving, its tread stopping only inches from his toes. Can your ancestors improve my logistics efficiency? I asked. Zhou Wanshan's throat bobbed. He looked at the spinning blades, then silently stepped aside. The saws bit into the white jade pillars. The bronze plaque crashed to the ground, shattering instantly. The stone dragons were snapped into pieces, and the jade stairs were ground into gravel under the heavy treads. In minutes, the 600-year-old gate was gone. I looked at the now wide entrance and nodded. Make this a 6-lane road. Separate the incoming and outgoing traffic. No loitering at the entrance. Zhou Wanshan stood by the pile of rubble, his eyes turning red. Zhao Dezhu walked over and handed him a wooden board. Manager Zhou, don't just stand there. Register these scraps into the inventory. I was the sect leader, Zhou Wanshan croaked. Now I'm a workshop director? Watch your workplace titles, I reminded him. Zhou Wanshan clutched the wooden board, his eyes getting even redder. My first stop was the alchemy hall. 36 cauldrons were lined up in 2 rows. Over 100 disciples were sitting before them, some controlling fires, others sorting herbs. An alchemist rushed forward to meet me. Sect leader Lin, because of the battle today, the fires were out for half a day. I looked at the shift schedule on the wall. How many batches do you brew a day? 3. The alchemist said, puffing out his chest. If we stay up all night, we can do 4. And how many pills per batch? If luck is on our side, 12 pills. 2 or 3 might even be mid-grade. I stayed silent. The alchemist thought I was impressed and started to smile. Senior brother, Lu Xiaoya said, looking at her notes. There are over 100 of them, and they produce less in a day than one of our automated pots. The alchemist's smile vanished. I walked to a cauldron and touched the side. It was still warm. Manual fire starting. Manual temperature control. A whole night of work for 12 pills. And you're proud of this? Alchemy requires patience, the alchemist argued. A manual workshop like this is an insult to industry, I said. I waved to the mechanical dogs. Smash them all. Recycle the metal. Scan the formations. Clear the floor for an assembly line. No, these are the lifeblood of generations of alchemists. Several disciples threw themselves onto the cauldrons. 300 mechanical dogs turned their heads in unison. Their barrels began to glow red. Actually, the alchemist whispered, stepping back. These old pots were due for an upgrade anyway. Next was the blacksmithing pavilion. A dozen smiths were stripped to the waist, swinging hammers against anvils. I watched them finish a single arrow. It took forever. This arrow takes 7 days to refine, the elder smith said, wiping sweat from his brow. Quality artifacts cannot be rushed. I pointed to the mechanical dog. The 6 tubes on its back. From raw material to finished assembly, it takes 9 seconds. The elder smith opened his mouth, but no words came out. Keep 2 furnaces as museum exhibits, I ordered. Tear down the rest. Move the anvils to the stamping workshop. I turned to the 9 sect elders standing behind me. As for you, your new shift starts today. Wang Taizhu and Li Guden brought over several large wooden crates. They were filled with blue jumpsuits. The words Luoyun Industrial were printed in white on the chest. There were even matching round safety helmets. The elders held the clothes, their expressions grim. We are Foundation establishment cultivators. How can we wear the clothes of common laborers? One elder roared. Lu Xiaoya flipped through her ledger. Refusing the uniform is a 300 spirit stone fine. Refusing the safety helmet is another 500. The elder's lips trembled. Do you have the helmet in a larger size? Half an hour later, the 9 elders were lined up in front of a conveyor belt, their blue jumpsuits fitting them awkwardly. Zhou Wanshan had also changed his clothes, but he wasn't given a wrench. Instead, he held a broom. He looked at the name tag on his chest, his voice shaking. Sanitation Department Manager? I pointed to the black spirit residue leaking from the back of a mechanical dog. Yes, You're in charge of cleaning up the waste. Sort it properly. Don't throw away anything that can be recycled. I was the Qingyun sect leader. Management requires experience, I said. You're the best fit. The mechanical dog's exhaust port hissed, spitting out a fresh clump of black sludge right onto Zhou Wanshan's shoe. He closed his eyes and gripped the broom tight. A muffled wail echoed through the pavilion. While the elders were being processed, Lu Xiaoya had already broken into the Qingyun treasury. Chest after chest was flung open. The glow of spirit stones illuminated her face. 320,000 low-grade stones, 9,000 mid-grade, and there are 4 chests we haven't even opened yet. She dove into the pile, her abacus clicking faster than the eye could see. 672 artifacts, 40,000 spirit herbs. We're rich. The treasury guard cowered in the corner. Manager Lu, those are the disciples' monthly salaries. They are now group assets, she snapped. Your wages will be calculated at the end of the month. I walked into the main hall of the Qingyun sect and sat directly on the sect leader's throne. I spread out a map and began circling areas around the 3 spirit veins. Alchemy assembly line here. Artifact stamping plant there. Talisman printing press over here. And we'll need a large-scale energy station. The Qingyun sect's manual workshops were primitive, but the buildings and the labor force were already in place. Once I installed the machinery, production capacity would increase by at least 50 times. I was about to circle the mining area in the back mountains when a piercing alarm shrieked in my mind. Warning! The system map in my mind flashed a violent, bleeding red. An anomaly appeared right below the main hall, pulsing with a golden light that seemed to burn through the virtual display. My hand froze, the wrench hovering over the map. The sensors were screaming. High concentration, undeveloped energy detected. It sat 3,700 feet below the surface. This wasn't just a small deposit. It was a supreme-grade spirit vein, but there was a catch. The system flagged it immediately. The vein had been marked with a divine stone seal by a golden core stage cultivator. Any attempt to mine it would trigger a defensive war. I stepped off the back of the water-gold crystal beast and onto the main square of the Qingyun sect. The red warning light on my vision wouldn't stop blinking. Supreme-grade spirit vein, I whispered. Zhou Wanshan, the former sect leader who was tailing me like a kicked dog, heard those 4 words. His legs turned to jelly. He collapsed, crawling forward to grab my leg, his forehead dripping with cold sweat. Sect leader Lin, you can't. You absolutely cannot touch what's down there. Xiaoya ran over, clutching her ledger. Her eyes weren't filled with fear, they were sparkling with greed. Senior brother, how many spirit stones is a supreme-grade vein worth? I checked the system's estimate. A slow smirk spread across my face. If we convert it to low-grade stones, there are about 12 zeros after the first digit. Xiaoya looked down at her ledger, her pen hand shaking. 12 zeros? Senior brother, why are we even selling pills? Let's just sell the mountain. Sell it? We don't have enough for ourselves. I crouched down and pressed my palm against the cool stone tiles of the square. The system map expanded. Deep underground, a massive violet gold light mass swirled, its borders stretching further than the sensors could see. This vein held enough energy to power a nascent soul holy land for centuries. With this, my recipe furnaces wouldn't need manual stones. My mechanical dogs wouldn't need to run on treadmills. My industrial assembly lines could run 24/7. The violent giant bear had just been hauled into the square. When it heard it didn't have to run on the wheel anymore, its eyes actually teared up. It hugged my leg, letting out a soft, pathetic whimper. I patted its head. Don't worry. Once we dig the mine, I'll transfer you to the cafeteria as a professional taste tester. The bear nodded frantically, its tuft of black fur flopping back and forth. But Zhou Wanshan looked like he'd seen a ghost. Sect leader Lin, that ground belongs to the Wang family. We really can't touch it. Wang Taizhu leaned in, resting his massive wrench on his shoulder. Which Wang family? Is there anyone bigger than us around here? Zhou Wanshan pulled back his collar, revealing a dark gold slave mark burned into his chest. The Ziyang Wang family. They are a golden core cultivation clan that rules a 100,000-mile radius. The Qingyun sect is nothing to them. To put it bluntly, our founder was just a dog sent here by the Wangs to watch their land. Li Gooden scratched his head. If he was a guard dog, Why did he have a guardian spirit beast? Zhou Wanshan's lip twitched. The water gold crystal beast was also borrowed from the Wangs. According to the contract, we have to return it in 300 years. The beast, which was resting near my chair, suddenly bolted and hid behind me. It already had a logistics department wooden tag hanging from its neck. It clearly didn't want to go back. Zhou Wanshan fumbled for a black jade slip and held it out with both hands. Look, the Wang family set the rules centuries ago. The Qingyun sect can use the surface energy, but we aren't allowed to touch a single inch below 300 feet. Anyone who tries will be personally executed by the Wang family's golden core ancestor. Wang Tieju's wrench hit the floor with a loud clatter. Senior brother, maybe we should forget it. A golden core old monster could flatten us with one finger. Li Gooden nodded. We can move the factory, but we can't move if we're buried 6 feet under. Xiaoya looked at the map, then at the slave mark on Zhou Wanshan's chest. Her face was a mask of agony. 12 zeros. But if the ancestor comes, we won't even keep our lives. I took the jade slip and skimmed the text. The Wang family had claimed this 700 years ago. They'd left this massive vein to rot in the dirt for 7 centuries. To me, that wasn't just a waste, it was a crime. I chuckled and tossed the slip back into Zhou Wanshan's arms. Resources in the ground are just rocks. Only when you dig them out do they become assets. Do you think a true capitalist fears a monopoly? I tapped the stone tile with my old wrench. We're going to break the monopoly. Zhou Wanshan's mouth hung open, but no sound came out. Taiju and Gooden shared a look, then silently reached down to pick up their tools. Senior brother, Xiaoya said, her voice steadying. How much will this mine cost to start? Empty the Qingyun treasury, I said. Her smile froze. All of it. 18,000 spirit stones and 300,000 pounds of iron. Not even a scrap left. I nodded. Initial startup capital. She took a deep breath, her chest heaving. How long until the machine pays for itself? 15 minutes. Where's the treasury? I'm moving it now. Xiaoya turned and sprinted toward the main hall, waving her ledger like a battle flag. Taiju, Gooden, call everyone from the Qingyun branch. If anyone hides a single stone, I'm docking their meat rations for 3 months. Zhou Wanshan stayed on his knees, his lips trembling. That was our sect's lifeblood. Zhao Dezhu walked past and patted his shoulder. Director Zhou, think bigger. It's group assets now. In less than an hour, the treasury was picked clean. Mountains of iron filled the square, and 18,000 spirit stones were piled in the center. 3,000 disciples gathered around the perimeter, whispering in confusion. I stepped into the pile of materials and summoned the industrial and infrastructure modules. Deep resource extraction requirements confirmed. Generating large-scale drilling rig blueprint. Asterisk, this build will consume all current inventory. Execute. Asterisk. I hit confirm. A flow of blue light erupted from my feet, racing across the square like a digital tide. Everyone back. Don't block the assembly line. The disciples scrambled backward, some tripping over their own feet. I raised my wrench and slammed it into the pile of iron. Clang. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of metal levitated into the air. In the blue light, the iron began to split, fold, and snap together. A massive framework rose from the center of the square. The first steel pillar reached 30 feet. Then the second, then the third. A massive drive shaft pierced through the frame. All 18,000 spirit stones dissolved into the core as pure energy. The ground cracked as 6 massive support arms slammed into the mountainside, anchoring the entire peak. A 60-foot wide spiral drill bit lowered slowly, glowing with purple spiritual circuits. The 100-foot tall drilling tower fully deployed, its shadow swallowing half the sect. The disciples stared up, their necks aching as they tried to see the top. Zhou Wanshan sat paralyzed on the edge of the square. He's really doing it. He's digging for the vein. Taiju looked at the drill, his throat dry. Senior brother, is this thing going to drill a hole straight through the mountain? I sat back in my chair and put on a pair of homemade sunglasses. No, it's only going down 3,700 feet. Gooden looked at his feet. And after that, if it hits the ore, it stops. If it doesn't, it keeps going. Zhou Wanshan heard me and crawled toward my chair. Sect leader Lin, the Wang family seals are down there. The moment the drill touches them, they'll know. I raised the control jade. Good. Then they can bring their property deeds so we can negotiate. Start the engine. The entire tower erupted in violet light. Boom. The spiral drill began to roar. The stone tiles shattered instantly. Thick layers of rock were sucked into the discharge pipes and spat out as dust. The drill slammed into the earth. The entire mountain peak shuddered and sank. Buildings groaned, and rocks tumbled down the cliffs. 3,000 disciples grabbed onto pillars for dear life, their screams drowned out by the mechanical thunder. The mountain is collapsing. The machine is eating the sect. The drill's RPMs continued to climb, screaming into the depths. The violet circuits lit up, layer by layer, from the base of the tower to the very tip. Within a 100-mile radius, the world's spiritual energy was forcibly seized. It formed dozens of visible currents, swirling like a massive hurricane, all pouring directly into my drilling tower. Deep in the surrounding forests, rogue cultivators snapped their eyes open in terror. They felt the energy inside their own bodies being drained away. Someone was stealing the world's breath. Zhou Wanshan watched the power gauge on the control panel climb higher and higher. His face went from pale to deathly white. "It's over," he whispered. "With a disturbance this big, the Wang family will definitely know." I ignored him and picked up my cup of sour plum soup. I waved a hand toward the massive treadmill where the spirit bear was still running for its life. "The bear can clock out now. We're switching to natural power." The giant bear let out a roar of pure joy. It collapsed into a pile of empty spirit stone crates, panting, finally free from its Sisyphean task. A split second later, a piercing screech of metal on rock erupted from the base of the tower. A notification flashed in my vision. *3, 600 feet reached. High-intensity ceiling strata detected. Golden core level formation encountered. Cease drilling. *. Zhou Wanshan lunged for the control jade, his eyes bulging. "Stop. Stop it now." I didn't even look at him. I picked up an old wrench and slammed it down on the red overload button. Capital expansion doesn't have a stop key. Drill through it. The tower's core turned a violent, angry red. The RPMs of the spiral drill exploded. The golden core formation held for exactly 3 breaths before it shattered into a million shards of light. Boom. The drill punched through the final layer of rock. A geyser of violet gold spiritual liquid erupted from the hole. It shot up through the center of the tower, burst out of the top, and pierced the clouds like a pillar of divine light. The air for 100 miles became thick with energy. At the edge of the square, common weeds instantly mutated, blooming into glowing spirit flowers. 10,000 miles away, in the ancestral lands of the Wang family, the earth shook. Inside a cave that had been sealed for a century, a gray-haired old man opened his eyes. The life lamp in front of him flickered violently. Who dares touch the Wang family's supreme spirit vein? Back at the sect, the violet gold liquid continued to spray into the sky. Inside the tower, 10,000 formation runes glowed with blinding intensity. The entire Luoyun sect was now drowning in pure energy. The ancient halls began to hum in resonance. In a crack in the plaza tiles, a withered yellow weed straightened up. In the blink of an eye, it grew 3 feet tall, its leaves shimmering with 3 silver veins. A thick medicinal fragrance filled the air. A disciple stared at the plant at his feet, his jaw dropping. Silver-veined chi grass? Doesn't this take 30 years to grow? He reached down to pull it, but Xiaoya tackled him before he could touch a leaf. "Hands off. This is corporate property." The disciple scrambled back. "Manager Xiao, that was literally a weed 2 seconds ago. Everything in the factory zone must be registered." Xiaoya snapped, pulling out her ledger and scribbling furiously. 1 wild spirit herb. Estimated value, 80 spirit stones. We need standardized management here. Everywhere I looked, life was exploding. The abandoned herb gardens were covered in green sprouts. Old, dead trees were growing new branches with faint spirit patterns on the bark. Wang Taizhu grabbed a handful of dirt and watched as 2 grains of spirit rice rolled out of the soil. "Senior brother, the very dirt we're standing on can grow medicine now." Li Guden was face down by the spirit spring, scooping up water with both hands. "1 sip of this is worth half a month of cultivation." I watched the energy gauge climb and couldn't hide my grin. This was real power. Burning spirit stones was for amateurs. If you're going to mine, you use the mine to run the machines. 6 massive spirit conduction pipes slid out from the base of the tower, plugging directly into the factory's grid. The cold alchemy furnaces roared to life first. Then came the talisman printers and the heavy stamping presses. 300 mechanical dogs felt their power cells hit 100%. Their gun barrels glowed with lethal blue light. The giant bear crawled out from its pile of crates and looked at its paws. The treadmill had stopped. It didn't have to chase that piece of rhino meat it could never catch anymore. It rushed over and hugged my leg, whimpering with gratitude. Fine, fine, I said, waving my wrench. You're officially reassigned. Go report to the cafeteria. The bear didn't need to be told twice. It bounded off toward the kitchen with a light step. The water-splitting beast tried to nudge me next, but Xiaoya grabbed its horn and flipped through her transport ledger. Not you, she said firmly. You haven't earned back your fruit expenses yet. Go haul 30 loads of freight. The divine beast's ears drooped, and it trudged dejectedly toward the cargo bay. System prompts began flooding my vision. Asterisk Supreme Spirit Vein connected to industrial power grid. Current supply can support full load operation of the primary factory for 300 years. Heavy industrial military module, 30% unlocked. Asterisk. I spun my wrench. 30%? If I dug 2 more veins, I could unlock the heavy weapons division immediately. Deacon Zhao, give me every map of the local mineral veins. Don't miss a single one within 10,000 miles. Zhao Deshun pulled out a communication jade immediately. Boss Lin, normal maps are easy. But nobody dares sell maps of the veins marked by the Wang family. Double the price. That might not be enough to solve it quickly. Triple it. The hesitation in Zhao's eyes vanished. He turned and sprinted for the gates. Don't you worry. Even if they buried a mine under their ancestral graves, I'll find it for you. Zhou Wanshan was slumped against a support pillar, the slave mark on his chest glowing hot. He looked up at the pillar of violet light, his lips trembling. Sect leader Lin, before the Wang family gets here, let's plug the hole. Please. I looked at him. The machine just started. If I shut it down now, who pays for the 80,000 spirit stones I spent on the first 18 minutes of operation? You. Me. The Luoyan sect. Anyone. Just let us live. He crawled over and grabbed the base of the tower. The Wang ancestor is a late-stage golden core expert. He can flatten this entire mountain with one palm. Then I definitely can't plug it, I said, checking the pressure gauges. If I block the vein, the machines have no power. How am I supposed to defend against his palm without power? Zhou Wanshan froze, unable to find an argument. Suddenly, the violet gold light flickered. The clouds high above turned a deep, bloody red. The air for 100 miles turned as heavy as lead. A massive, crushing pressure crossed through space and slammed down onto the sect. Crack. The plaza floor split open. The roof beams of the side hall snapped like twigs. 3,000 disciples hit the ground, their knees buckling as they were forced into a kneel. The 9 Foundation establishment elders couldn't hold it either, their foreheads pressed against the stone, bodies shaking uncontrollably. Zhou Wanshan coughed up a mouthful of blood as his slave mark flared. The Wang ancestor. His divine sense is here. Wang Taizhu gripped a conveyor belt, his legs shaking violently. Senior brother, is this golden core pressure? I feel it, I muttered. The pressure just stalled 2 of my production lines. I reached out and touched the drilling platform. The system flashed a warning. Asterisk external spiritual pressure exceeds safety limits. Automatic pressure relief initiated, asterisk. 6 massive support arms shifted, redirecting the crushing weight pressing on my body straight into the mountain itself. I stood there by the controls, wrench in hand, my back perfectly straight. Li Gooden looked up from the ground, his eyes wide with awe. Senior brother, did your cultivation break through? No. I just made sure the spot where the boss stands meets safety standards. In the future, stand behind the equipment. Don't try to tank pressure with your bare chest. The blood-red sky suddenly tore open, revealing a black rift. A massive, 100-foot flying ship smashed through the clouds. 9 golden dragons were carved into the bow, and the hull was encrusted with spirit jade. A massive sail hung high, bearing the purple character for Wang. Hundreds of silver-armored guards lined the decks, every single one of them at the peak of Qi refining. In the center of the ship, a middle-aged man in purple robes sat on a golden throne. He held a black jade seal in his hand, his golden core aura pinning the entire mountain down. Zhou Wanshan looked up, and the last bit of color left his face. Wang Xianlai, the Wang family chief enforcer. Why is he here personally? An elder beside him was trembling so hard his voice cracked. 7 years ago, a sect missed their tribute by 30%. He led the slaughter himself. 600 people. Not a single soul was left alive. Hearing this, the disciples pressed their faces even lower into the dirt. I dropped my wrench. Around me, people were tearing off their safety helmets and pressing their foreheads into the dirt. Zhou Wanshan scrambled to his knees, kowtowing repeatedly toward the massive flying ship. Zhou Wanshan of the Azure Cloud sect greets the enforcer. He screamed, his voice cracking with terror. The mining of this spirit vein was all Huang Yugui's doing. We were forced into this. Wang Xianlai didn't even spare him a glance. His eyes were fixed on the base of my drilling rig. Purple gold spirit liquid was still surging into the collection tanks, each breath of time worth a fortune. The Wang family had guarded this spot for 700 years, waiting for the vein to mature. Now, a group of lowly rogue cultivators had dared to reach out their hands first. Wang Xianlai stood up slowly, his heavy purple robes trailing behind him. Vile ants dare to touch the Wang family's spirit vein? Your entire lineage shall be executed. His golden core intent merged with his voice, vibrating through the air. The stone bricks of the plaza sank another half-foot into the earth. Many of the Azure Cloud disciples began bleeding from their noses and mouths, too terrified to even beg for mercy. Xiaoyu was huddling behind the drilling platform, clutching her spirit stone chest. She looked terrified, but mostly she looked annoyed. Senior brother, he wants to execute our 9 generations. We don't even have 9 generations of relatives. I thought about it for a second. The Luoyun sect had been poor for so long that all our relatives had cut ties years ago. He's probably going to have to make a few empty trips, I muttered. Wang Xuanlia's brow furrowed. The black seal in his hand vibrated. I am speaking. Who permitted you to interrupt? I picked up my wrench and tapped it against the outer casing of the drilling rig. Clang. The power reading stabilized. The production line, which had briefly stuttered, began humming again. I finally looked up at him. You say this spirit vein belongs to the Wang family. Do you have a property deed? Wang Xuanlia's face darkened. What? A property deed. Something to prove this mine belongs to you, I said, holding out an open hand. If you don't have a deed, surely you have a mining permit? The 3,000 disciples kneeling on the ground all looked up at once. Zhou Wanshan's jaw dropped, his face twitching before he hurriedly buried his head back in the dirt. Behind Wang Xianlai, a silver-armored guard roared. Under heaven, who dares to ask the Wang family for proof? So that's a no, I said. I nodded toward Xiaoya. Financial manager, take note. Illegal claim on corporate assets. Attempted extortion. Xiaoya, hiding behind a support pillar, pulled out her ledger and started scribbling furiously. Senior brother, extortion with 12 zeros. How much compensation should I add? Add 30% for the initial threat. If he moves, we'll calculate equipment depreciation and mental distress. Fury boiled over on Wang Xuanlia's face. The blood-red clouds around the ship pressed lower. Filthy, worldly insults. You dare use such language to mock a cultivation family? The Wang family has held this land for a millennium. Every mountain and vein belongs to us. I raised my wrench and pointed it at the fountain of spirit liquid beneath my feet. You've occupied it for 1,000 years and couldn't dig it out? That just means your productivity is trash. Leaving resources to gather dust while forbidding others from developing them. Who made these stupid rules? The black seal in Wang Xuanlia's hand suddenly shot into the sky. Rules? The word of the Wang family is the rule. The seal expanded in the wind, instantly growing to 100 feet wide. Mountain and river patterns emerged on its base, casting a heavy shadow that swallowed the entire plaza. Zhou Wanshan looked up and saw the treasure. His voice broke into a high-pitched shriek. The heaven-turning seal. A peak-grade treasure. Run. We can't run. The whole area is suppressed. 9 Foundation establishment elders were pinned to the ground, unable to even lift an arm. The seal continued to grow, its massive body transforming into a 1,000-foot mountain of black bronze. Before it even touched the ground, the main peak of the mountain began to sink. The alchemy rooms and factories started cracking, dust billowing from the windows. Wang Xianlai stood at the prow of his ship, looking down at me like I was a bug. An ant dares to talk about rules? Today, I will show you what a great family is. The mountain-sized seal crashed down. 3,000 disciples covered their heads, wailing in despair. Xiaoya lunged toward me, her ledger flying into the air from the sheer wind pressure. Senior brother, our factory is going to be flattened. I see it, I said. I looked at the massive weight descending toward us and sighed. Why does everyone love posing right in front of my intake vent? I reached out and pressed the large red button on the side of the drilling console. Activate automated vein extraction and spirit pressure backflow system. The top of the drilling rig lit up with a ring of crimson light. The extraction program reversed. The range expanded to a 10-mile radius. Every bit of unauthorized spiritual energy was officially reclassified as recoverable fuel. The massive shadow of the mountain seal suddenly jerked to a halt. Wang Xianlai, still holding his hand signs, stared down in confusion. Huang Yugawei, you still dare to touch that machine? The seal has fallen. In 3 breaths, you and this mountain will be nothing but meat paste. I leaned back into my grandmaster's chair and moved my cup of sour plum soup to the inner cup holder. Stop posing in my intake zone. A deep, muffled roar erupted from the base of the rig. The spiritual energy that had been spraying outward suddenly did a violent U-turn. The purple-gold pillar of light reaching for the clouds snapped back, pouring directly into the rig's power core. Then, every bit of natural spirit energy within 10 miles was pulled in. Wang Xuanlia's expression changed instantly. He scrambled to pull a dozen mid-grade spirit stones from his storage bag. Stabilize. Hold the ship. The moment the stones touched the array, their energy was sucked dry. Crack. The stones shattered into dust, scattering across the deck. Wang Xianlai looked up, his hands forming new signs. Heaven-turning seal. Crush him. The 100-foot mountain shadow vibrated violently. The patterns on its base flashed. It tried to draw energy from the surroundings to maintain its weight, but the 10-mile radius was a desert. It had no choice but to consume its own internal reserves. 1 breath later, the mountain shadow shrunk by 30%. 2 breaths later, it was only 10 feet wide. 3 breaths later, the shadow vanished entirely. A palm-sized bronze seal fell from the sky, bouncing off the ground right next to my feet. Clang. Xiaoya peeked out from behind her ledger. She had been waiting for the sound of a mountain collapsing. She looked at the tiny seal, then up at the empty sky. Senior brother, where's the mountain? Out of credit, I said. I nudged the seal with the toe of my shoe. Big size, but the battery only lasts 3 seconds. False advertising. Wang Xianlai stared at the seal, a roar of pure rage tearing from his throat. Impossible. The heaven-turning seal is a treasure passed down for 700 years. It can suppress a golden core master. 700 years, and you haven't upgraded to a new energy source? Your family's after-sales service is terrible. Wang Xianlai bit his tongue, forcing his internal spirit energy to circulate. But the moment he moved his power, the drilling rig's extraction program locked onto him. High-concentration mobile power source detected. Not registered to the group. Beginning recovery. Wang Xuanlia's internal energy suddenly reversed, surging out of his meridians toward the machine. His chest swelled violently, the pressure building until his protective robes split right down the middle. One by one, his flying swords lost their glow and tumbled from the sky like dead birds. Stop! Damn you, stop it! Wang Xianlai screamed. He lunged toward the control array of his bronze flying ship, his fingers clawing at the air. But the moment his palm touched the array, the entire vessel died. The power vanished instantly. The bow dipped, the deck tilted, and Wang Xuanlia's feet slipped. With a sharp cry, he tumbled over the railing. Save me! The massive bronze ship scraped against the main peak, the sound of grinding metal echoing through the valley. It smashed through half of a side hall and buried its tail deep into the medicinal herb fields. As for Wang Xianlai, he fell from a height of 1,000 feet, crashing through 3 layers of roofing before hitting the ground. Boom! A cloud of dust settled, leaving a perfectly human-shaped crater in the middle of the refining courtyard. 3,000 Luoyun disciples shrank back, necks tucked in, none of them daring to get close. A moment later, a trembling hand reached out from the pit, gripping a cracked floor tile. Wang Xianlai crawled out, his face caked in gray filth and his left leg twisted at an unnatural angle. He reached for a message talisman to call for help, but the air suddenly filled with a rhythmic, mechanical clicking. Clack, clack, clack. 30 mechanical dogs surrounded the pit. 6-barrel launchers rose from their backs, locking onto his head. For more dogs lunged forward, their cold metal claws pinning his shoulders and limbs to the ground. Presumptuous. Wang Xianlai struggled, his face turning purple. I am the external envoy of the Ziyang Wang family. How dare you touch me? One of the mechanical dogs stepped firmly on his wrist. With a swift movement, it flicked his message talisman into a recovery bin. Zhao Dezhu ran over, clutching the employee registry. He looked down at the envoy, and then at me. Boss, how do we categorize this one? A prisoner of war, or a walk-in temporary worker? Let's start with illegal trespasser, I said, walking over. He destroyed 3 floors of the side hall, Huang Yugue added, checking his notes. And 78 floor tiles. Plus, we should charge him for littering from a high altitude. Xiaoya was already crouching by the pit, her fingers flying across her abacus. Click-clack, click-clack. Senior brother, he also smashed 2 alchemy furnaces. Those 2 were already scheduled to be scrapped, Zhou Wanshan whispered from the crowd. Xiaoya shot him a glare. Dismantling takes labor, doesn't it? He did it for us. Shouldn't we charge him a service fee? Zhou Wanshan gripped his broom and went back to being quiet. Wang Xianlai looked like he was about to explode. The veins in his neck bulged. Huang Yugue, you've done it now. Our ancestor has come out of seclusion. When he arrives, he will pull your soul from your body. Not a single blade of grass will be left in this pathetic sect. I didn't bother answering. I signaled the mechanical dogs, and they hoisted him up, forcing him to kneel before me. I reached down and picked up the heaven-turning seal. I tossed it in my hand a couple of times. Without spirit energy to support it, the glow had faded, and it weighed less than 20 pounds. Wang Xuanli's eyes went wide. Give that back. That is a treasure refined by the ancestor himself. If you damage it even slightly. I turned toward the scrap melting furnace. What are you doing? Stop. Huang Yugue, that's a grade 3 treasure. I tossed the seal. It arched through the air and landed squarely in the scrap recovery chute. Clang. The conveyor belt carried it into the furnace, and the heavy doors hissed shut. Asterisk high-purity spirit copper detected, 760 pounds. 9 sets of grade 3 suppression runes found. Estimated yield, 24 mechanical dog chassis, asterisk. The internal fires roared, and the heaven-turning seal began to liquefy. Wang Xuanli's chest heaved. He coughed up a mouthful of bloody foam. You actually smelted it? It was taking up space in the warehouse, I said. Recycling it into 24 dogs is a much better use of resources. Wang Xianlai stared at the furnace, his body shaking uncontrollably. The ancestor won't let you go. 3 golden core masters. 8,000 clan soldiers. What do you have to stop them? This scrap metal. I walked up to him and stepped on his face, pinning him against the bricks while the mechanical dogs held his limbs. Go back and tell your ancestor. I've just performed a forced merger on this spirit vein. It's mine now. You're dreaming, he screamed into the dirt. The spirit vein is Wang property. The blood contract was signed 700 years ago. I pulled out the black jade contract and flipped through a few pages before dropping it in front of his nose. The contract doesn't mention Luoyun Industries. The original signers are long dead. This asset has been idle for 7 centuries with 0 productivity. Your management rating is a flat 0. I tapped his forehead with my wrench. As the new management, I'm notifying you. The Wang family has lost its operating license. The envoy opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The surrounding disciples kept their heads down, terrified. My junior sister, Xiaoya, nudged me with her ledger. Senior brother, for the ownership transfer, do we need his signature? His rank is too low. It wouldn't be valid anyway. What about when the Wang ancestor comes? Then we'll have him sign the merger agreement, I said. 3 golden core masters would make excellent workshop supervisors. Wang Xianlai started thrashing again. Huang Yugui, you'll regret this. When the ancestor's wrath descends. I lifted my foot and waved the wrench at the mechanical dogs. If he's not convinced, tell him to bring the whole Wang family here to work for me. The dogs dragged him toward the newly built 6-lane road. Before he knew what was happening, a metal ejection plate slid under his backside. I walked over and gave the plate a quick kick. Get lost. Thwack. The plate snapped up, launching him over the sect walls. He tumbled down the rocky slope outside the mountain gate, leaving his crown and shoes behind. Huang Yugui, just you wait, his hoarse voice echoed from the distance. When the ancestor arrives, Luo Yun will be turned to ash. I watched him disappear, then looked up at the massive drilling rig humming over the purple-gold spirit vein. 3 golden core masters. 8,000 soldiers. My harvester could drain power, but it couldn't force enemies to stand in line. Capital expansion needs security. I opened the system's military interface and gripped my wrench. It was time for some heavy firepower. System loading, automated warship assembly line, floating cannon array blueprints. 3 days later, at the Wang family estate, Wang Xianlai knelt at the bottom of 9 stone steps. His right arm was gone. All that remained of the heaven-turning seal was a small, blackened fragment. Behind him, the remnants of the silver-armored guards stood trembling. Less than 30 had made it back. On the high throne sat Wang Tianheng, the family ancestor. He held a purple soul lamp in his hand, his eyes cold. You're saying, a drill bit crushed the heaven-turning seal? Wang Xianlai pressed his forehead to the cold stone. Ancestor, the spiritual pressure snapped back on us. The ship was thrown 100 miles. If I hadn't used a blood escape talisman, I wouldn't have survived. The elders in the hall went pale. They didn't want to believe a machine could break a top-tier treasure, but the evidence was right there. Useless, Wang Tianheng barked. He closed his fist, and the overwhelming pressure of a late-stage golden core master erupted. Outside, 100 spirit trees snapped like toothpicks. The Wang family has guarded that vein for 700 years. If they want to dig, they'll pay with their lives. Ancestor, please. Wang Xianlai cried. Go personally and wipe them out. Extermination is too easy for them. Wang Tianheng pulled out a purple gold medallion engraved with the word seal. The elders gasped. The Xiang blockade order? Ancestor, that's only used against nascent soul sects. Wang Tianheng pressed the medallion into a control array. Purple light shot into the sky. Notify the Alchemy League, the Crafting Guild, the 6 great chambers of commerce, and the 12 markets. Anyone who trades with Luo Yun is an enemy of the Wang family. If they buy 1 pill, kill 1 person. If they transport 1 wagon of goods, wipe out their entire clan. Streaks of purple light flew out from the hall, disappearing into the clouds. The Wang family's 1,000-year-old web of influence began to tighten. By the time the blockade reached the markets, Zhao Dezhu had just finished setting up 300 bags of our new blood-chi pills for sale. We had no idea the world was about to go dark. One moment, the street was packed with rogue cultivators. The next, half of them were sprinting away in terror. Several cultivators who were just snacking on my pills dropped them on the ground, not even daring to look back at the stalls. Refund. I'm not buying any more, someone screamed. The Wang family issued a blockade order. Anyone who buys is a dead man. Manager Zhao, we have no grudge, so don't drag me down with you. Zhao Dezhu stood behind his crate of snacks, his face turning a sickly shade of green. It's only 7 spirit stones a pill. These are top-tier goods for basically nothing. You're really not buying. My life is worth more than a pill. Who cares how good it is if I'm dead? In less than 15 minutes, the entire long street was empty. Nearby shops slammed their wooden shutters closed. Even the street vendors selling steamed buns pushed their carts into dark alleys and vanished. The Alchemy League refused our shipments. The Chambers of Commerce seized our transport ships. The Crafting Guild cut off our supply of refined iron. Yesterday, our pills were in high demand. Today, they sat on the curb, and no one dared to even touch them. Zhao Dezhu packed up his stall and crawled into a manure cart to hide. He sent a quick transmission to me. Boss, it's not that I'm disloyal, but the Wang family is hunting for me everywhere. I'm hiding for a few days. This cart smells terrible, but they probably won't search it. Back at the Qingyun factory, the transmission jade dimmed, and a heavy silence fell. Zhou Wanshan stood in his janitor uniform, his broom clattering to the floor. "It's over," he whispered. "The Wang family actually did it. We can't sell a single pill. If we couldn't sell pills or artifacts, how would I feed 3,000 disciples?" One of the alchemy elders clutched his official cap, sweat pouring down his forehead. "The factory consumes 100,000 pounds of beast meat every day. Our stock will last 7 days at most." "And after 7 days?" another asked. "Are the Foundation establishment elders supposed to gnaw on tree bark with the disciples?" Hundreds of workers gathered around the warehouse, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some were already planning their escape. Others quietly took off their uniforms, looking for a spot to hop the wall. Xiaoyu sat at the entrance of the finance office, clutching her thick ledgers. On the last page, the income column had stopped moving since noon yesterday. She flicked the beads of her abacus over and over, tears dripping onto the wood. 170,000 blood-chi pills. 30,000 artifacts. All stuck in the warehouse, she sobbed. "We're losing 400,000 stones a day. In 3 days, that's over 1 million. She wiped her face with her sleeve, her voice trembling. "Senior brother, are we bankrupt?" I sat by the drilling rig, sipping a bowl of sour plum soup. I looked at the empty order board, then turned my gaze toward the direction of the Wang family estate. Then, I threw my head back and laughed. "Ha!" Zhou Wanshan jumped, rushing to my side. "Sect leader, don't lose your mind. If things are really this bad, we can go to the Wang family and apologize." "Apologize for what?" I set down my soup, the smile on my face widening. "Everyone quiet down." Xiaoyu looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "Senior brother, we can't sell anything. How is this a good thing?" I picked up an old wrench and pointed it toward the warehouse. "Selling 1 pill only nets us 7 stones. To sell 100,000, we have to manage shipping and customer service. The profit is thin, the process is tedious, and we have to care about what the customers think. That kind of business should have stopped a long time ago." Zhou Wanshan's lip twitched. "If the civilian lines stop, how do we make money?" I chuckled. "Arms dealers don't need a customer's permission. You beat them into submission first, then you collect the payment." Zhou Wanshan dropped his broom again. You want to attack the Wang family? They're the ones who stopped me from making money first." I raised my hand and summoned the system interface. Blue light flooded the factory grounds. Golden core artifact. Reverse pressure sample analysis complete. High-grade spirit vein. Full power input connected. Heavy industrial military module. Unlocked. The blue interface expanded. The icons for alchemy, talismans, and civilian crafting all flashed red and shut down. Xiaoyu saw the shutdown sequence and lunged for the console. "Senior brother, if the furnaces stop, that's 400,000 stones a day gone forever. Recorded in the books," I said, lifting her and her ledger out of the way. "Mark it as a debt owed by the Wang family." I pressed my palm against the master switch. "All units, listen up. Cut all civilian production. Divert all computing power and energy to the military module." Boom. 36 alchemy furnaces extinguished at the same time. The conveyor belts ground to a halt. A second later, the purple-gold spiritual energy from the high-grade spirit vein surged into the main core. Then the second, the third, the fourth. In a single breath, 12 swords dropped into the transport rack. "People call themselves masters for forging 1 sword in 7 days," I said, pointing the wrench at the growing line. "Look closely. This is what crafting actually looks like." The crafting elder clutched his head. 1 sword every 5 breaths. And they're all high-grade? I've practiced for 120 years. What have I been doing with my life? Rows of flying swords were snatched up by mechanical arms and sent to the launch racks at the front of the factory. Each sword had a built-in radar. No sword cultivator was needed to control them. No one had to practice sword techniques for years. Scan, lock, launch, track, and explode. It takes a lifetime to train a cultivator, but only a few seconds to copy a program. I pressed the test button. 3,000 flying swords shot into the sky simultaneously. They adjusted their direction automatically, filling the sky above the main peak with dense blue light. The clouds were shredded into pieces. The disciples who were trying to climb the wall moments ago silently climbed back down and put their uniforms back on. Manager Zhou, are we still running away? One asked. Running? Where are you going? Mechanical arms frozen, holding half-finished swords over the casting slots. The furnaces were still burning, and the spirit energy was still flowing, but the storage racks next to the smelters were so empty that even the rats had left. Xiaoya stood at the office door, her fingers flying across her abacus. Every click made her face grow paler. Sect leader, we only have enough steel left for 300 swords. The spirit vein consumes 20,000 stones a day, but the shop isn't putting out a single product. She ran to my chair, her eyes red. I leaned back, sipping my sour plum soup. The ice cubes clinked against the side of the bowl. Where is Zhao Dezhu? He went to the Fong family market to buy iron. Xiaoya whispered, biting her lip. He's been gone since morning. If he doesn't come back soon, the energy costs will burn us alive. The books will burn before the energy does, I said, closing the account ledger. Don't let the numbers ruin the production mood. Xiaoya hugged the books tight. The numbers have already ruined me. The workers nearby lowered their heads. The forging elders stood by the silent conveyor belts, wrenches limp in their hands. Even old Kai, dressed in his janitor uniform, looked grim. Sect leader Lin, the Wang family's move is too cruel. They bought out every mine within 50,000 miles. They even bought the scrap metal from rogue cultivators. You can't find a single piece of iron in the markets. The price has jumped 10 times. 10 times. Wang Tieju's eyes nearly popped out. Yesterday, it was 2 stones a pound, Li Gooden added, clutching a mechanical leg he had just detached. Today, people are asking for 20. I heard some are even asking for 30, and there's still a line of buyers who can't get any. The elder's face darkened. The Wang family issued a blockade. Anyone who sells to us loses their mines and their shops. This isn't business. They're trying to cut off our weapons. Well said, I nodded. The elder looked relieved for a second until I continued. So, from now on, don't call what they're doing business. Call it market clearing. Before anyone could respond, heavy footsteps echoed from the mountain gate. Zhao Dezhu sprinted across the 6-lane road, his clothes covered in mud and his shoes missing. He burst into the plaza, gasping for air as he leaned against a steel pillar. It's over. The mines are all gone. Everything is cut off. Xiaoya ran to him. Did you buy any iron? Buy? I didn't get a damn thing. Zhao threw his empty storage bag on the ground. I went to 6 markets. I couldn't even buy a needle. The first mine said they were out of stock. The second one shut its doors. At the third, the manager pointed at my nose and told me if I bought a single pound of iron, he'd wipe out my entire family. Wang Taizhu gripped his wrench. What do we do? Make swords out of wood. Li Gooden looked at the mechanical leg in his hands. Should we scrap the machines for parts? It might last us a few days. Don't you dare, old Kai barked, stepping in front of him. We need those 300 mechanical dogs for security. If the Wang family comes, are we supposed to fight them with brooms? He looked at the broom in his own hand and quietly hid it behind his back. In the distance, the fire in the smelting furnace dipped. The energy pipes were still pumping, but without material, the flames faded to a dull, dark red. A worker's voice trembled. Every second the line is stopped, we're losing money. Food, wages, maintenance, it's all piling up. 3 more days of this, and the Luoyun branch will be bankrupt. The crowd started to stir. A few disciples exchanged looks and began edging toward the gate. Old Kai blocked their path with his broom. Stay right there. You haven't returned your uniforms yet. Old Kai, the Wang family is going to kill us, one disciple cried. Staying here is just waiting for death. I used to think that too, Old Kai muttered. But then I realized staying here at least gets me a meal. There won't be any meals soon, the disciple shouted. No iron means no swords. No swords means nothing to stop a golden core cultivator. The murmurs grew louder. People talked about the Wang family's 3 golden core masters, their 8,000 elite troops, and the 12 vassal sects they were gathering. Xiaoya finally broke down, her tears splashing onto the pages of her ledger. Sect leader, are we really going bankrupt? I swirled the tea in my bowl and looked at the dead conveyor belt. Who told you that making weapons requires buying iron? Everyone froze. Zhao Dezhu wiped the sweat from his forehead. But the Wang family bought everything for 50,000 miles. The mines, the miners, even the scrap. Where else can we find material? I set my bowl down and flicked my wrist. A blue holographic map projected into the air. Mountain ranges lit up in rapid succession. The resource markers near the sect were all grayed out, blocked. But at the very edge of the map, a faint red glow pulsed beneath a desolate wasteland. Zhao Dezhu leaned in, his face turning white. "What is that?" "A mine," I said. "One the Wong family marked, but never touched." "That's the Black Wind Barrens," Zhao stammered. "It's crawling with high-level spirit beasts. The ground is unstable. The Wong family sent 37 miners in there years ago. None of them came back. They sealed it off." "They sealed the tunnels," I laughed. "Not the ore." Xiaoya wiped her eyes instantly. "How much iron is down there?" The system map expanded. A notification pinged. *Black Wind Barrens underground resources detected. 6.7 million pounds of fine iron. 30,000 pounds of spirit copper. Deep layer unknown minerals pending analysis. Xiaoya stared at the numbers, her breath hitching. 6.7 million pounds. Zhao Dezhu's legs gave out, and he hit the floor. "That much? Why haven't they dug it up?" "Because they're afraid to die," I said, standing up. "But I'm different. I have machines." Old Kai rushed to stop me. "Sect Leader Lin, you can't go there. There are Tier 3 beast packs and collapsing ley lines. Even the Wong family stayed away. How are we supposed to mine it?" I looked at him, my expression flat. "A minute ago, you were asking how we'd stop a golden core master. Now that the materials are at our doorstep, you're asking how we'll dig? When production hits a wall, you don't just lie down and give up." "Who taught you to think like that?" Old Kai stammered, his eyes wide. I didn't answer. "That place is a death trap," he continued. "That's why they call it heavy industry," I said flatly. "It's not a field trip." I turned to Xiaoya. "Give me a full inventory of what we have left." She flipped her ledger open instantly. 300 pounds of fine iron. 800 pieces of scrap artifacts. 1,100 broken flying shuttles. And the spirit stones? 27,000 low-grade. 3,000 mid-grade. I nodded. That was enough for the toll. "We're going to the Black Wind Barrens." Wang Taizhu blinked. "We're going there?" I raised my old wrench and pointed it toward the cold, silent steel furnace. "We aren't going anywhere. It's going to walk there itself." The crowd went silent. I swiped my hand across the system interface, dumping every bit of remaining processing power into the infrastructure module. The blue light flickered violently as the system began scanning the geological structures of the barrens, calculating transport routes and beast-clearing protocols. Complex mechanical blueprints flickered in the air, shifting and refining themselves every second. "Sect Leader," Xiaoya whispered, her voice regaining its strength. "What are we building this time?" I didn't answer. I walked to the forge and tossed a shattered flying shuttle into the melting vat. "Register every piece of scrap we have. If it can be dismantled, tear it apart. If it can be melted, burn it. What else can we burn?" "Send it all." Xiaoya scanned her notes. "Do the kitchen pots count? Or Supervisor Kai's broom? The bolts on the alchemy room door? The old abacus in the warehouse?" "Keep the abacus," I said, barely looking up. "That's for the chief financial officer." Xiaoya immediately hugged the abacus to her chest, glaring at the disciples. "Nobody touches my abacus." Old Kai stood there in his blue work uniform, holding the handle of his broom. He looked at the bubbling furnace, then at his broom, his face twitching. "Sect Leader, this was given to me on my first day of office." "Does sweeping increase production?" I asked. Not currently." "Then recycle it." He shoved the broom handle behind his back. "I've decided it has 30 more years of life in it." I ignored him. I tapped the interface, initiating the build. The blue light from the furnace expanded, covering the entire main plaza. 3,000 disciples scrambled back as the air pressure dropped. I slammed my wrench down into the air. Clang. A pulse of blue light shot from the wrench into the melting vat. Molten iron surged upward, splitting into dozens of pipes. Massive treads, over 30 feet wide, began to emerge from the light. Heavy axles slammed into the ground, shattering the stone tiles. The machine kept growing. The recycling efficiency was too low. Xiaoya ran up to the side of the massive crawler. "Sect Leader, how much material did we save by scrapping those ships?" "At least 3 days of furnace production." Her eyes lit up. "Can we scrap the guards the Wong family sent to?" We'd save even more. I looked at her. The CFO needs to follow the rules. We don't put living people in the recycling vat. Not yet. Fine, she sighed, closing her book. I'll just mark them down as labor costs. On top of the crawler, a circular turret rose. Then a second, a third, a fourth. A forest of anti-air cannons lined the roof, all pointing toward the sky, each one backed by a small spirit power radar. This wasn't just a miner. It was a fortress. Hundreds of barrels rotated simultaneously, locking onto the birds circling high in the clouds. A passing iron feather eagle made the mistake of flying over the roof. Instantly, every muzzle glowed with an ominous red light. The eagle panicked, flipped midair, and crashed straight into a nearby tree canopy. Wang Taiju looked up at the massive turrets, sweat dripping from his chin. He turned to me. Sect leader, are these cannons actually for mining? They are to stop people from stealing our ore, I replied. What if no one tries to steal it? Then we wait until someone does. Suddenly, Li Guden pointed at the rear of the vehicle and screamed. Sect leader, something is burning back here. The rear armor plates slid open to both sides, and a massive, high-temperature crystal iron refining furnace rose from the depths of the machine. 6 heavy feeding pipes snaked around the furnace body as the main chute began to spew crimson flames. Ore would enter from the front, waste would discharge from the sides, and the completely refined crystal iron would be funneled directly into the rear storage bin. System notifications flashed rapidly across my vision. The mobile refining furnace was fully assembled. The ore sorting program was loaded. Our resource utilization rate had just jumped to 97%. Our elder of artifact refining walked over to the furnace, his eyes glued to the vibrating feed pipes. He looked like he was staring at a miracle. A mining vehicle that can refine iron on the spot? It eliminates the need for round-trip transportation, I explained, pointing toward the massive rear bin. We dig the ore, refine it right here, and head back to the sect once the storage is completely full. The elder pinched the edge of his safety helmet, his face totally blank. I have refined artifacts for 120 years. Today is the first time I realized it could be done like this. Zhou Wanshan finally snapped out of his shock and rushed up to me. Sect leader Lin, how heavy is this monster? I glanced down at the system data. The chassis alone is 370,000 caddies. Fully loaded, it hits 600,000. Zhou Wanshan hit the ground hard, landing right on his butt. This isn't a mining operation. You are going out to exterminate a sect. The entire square fell into a dead silence. 3,000 disciples stared blankly at the steel beast towering over them. Its treads were taller than our main hall. The massive drill bit on the front hummed as it spun slowly. On the roof, the anti-air cannons continuously adjusted their angles, while the rear furnace belched out waves of heat. The vehicle hadn't even left the main square yet, but its sheer weight had already carved 2 deep trenches right into our 6-lane stone road. I walked over to the side of the hull and pulled open a heavy armored door. Inside lay rows of control seats, each equipped with its own steering wheel and a cluster of levers. Wang Taiju and Li Guden immediately took a synchronized step backward. Sect leader, who is supposed to drive this thing? The 2 of you, I said. Us, they yelled together. The machine handles the mining automatically, but we still need human hands to steer the direction. Wang Taiju waved his hands frantically in the air. I only know how to attach mechanical legs. I have never driven anything this massive. Li Guden pointed a shaking finger at his own chest. I once crashed a simple wheelbarrow into a wall. You want me to steer this mountain of steel? I shoved a safety helmet into each of their hands. Crashing into a wall is just equipment testing. Crashing into the Wang family is called route planning. Wang Yi flipped table, ran out, told them to shut up, array intact. 2,000 cultivators on hill, flying swords up, but all looking east. Black line on horizon, small as rice grain, grew. Thuds, gravel danced. Shook mountain. Crack under Wang Yi's feet, through tent to table. Guard used eagle eye, said vehicle. Wang Yi said bullshit, snatched scrying mirror, looked east. 230-foot treads crushing wasteland. Ancient trees snapped, rolled under tracks. Wood chips, slash dirt sprayed. Didn't slow down. 30-foot boulder, 6-layer drill accelerated, crumbled to dust. Treads rolled over it. Hundreds of barrels swiveling, Spiritual radar scanning. Second-tier beasts ran out, cannons locked on. Red lights flashed, beasts ran away. Wang Yi's hands shook, asked where it came from. Manager saw white letters, Luoyun Industrial. The cultivators on the mountain peak laughed. They watched my machine approach and mocked it, calling it a piece of scrap metal. They were convinced the drill would shatter against their defense array. The mine manager wiped sweat from his forehead, bowing to Wang Yi. He praised the elder's foresight, claiming that no matter how big the machine was, it was still just junk. Wang Yi chuckled, pouring more spiritual power into the Xiang array. He told his men to hold their positions and not waste energy. He wanted to see exactly how long I could keep bumping against his wall. Inside the cockpit, red warnings flooded the control panels. The alarm screamed that the array's strength exceeded the drill's rated power. Our speed dropped to a crawl. Wang Taiju gripped the steering wheel, his foot heavy on the power pedal, but the machine was barely moving. He looked back at me, panicked. He said the drill couldn't penetrate and the system wanted us to change routes. He was afraid the gears would snap. Li Guden had his face pressed against the observation window, watching purple flames wash over the armor. He suggested we back up or try digging under the mountain. I sat under the sunshade on the roof, holding my plum soup steady as the vehicle jolted. I looked down at them. The system suggested a detour, but it didn't suggest I limit the power. Taiju was confused. He thought we were already using the Supreme Spirit Vein. I told him we were only at production power. It was time for demolition power. I pulled out the control pad and slid the energy limit from the green zone straight into the purple. A new prompt flickered. Supreme Spirit Vein overload confirmed. The energy limit on the drill vanished. The machine entered forced breach mode. 6 spiritual conduits at the rear of the vehicle turned rigid. The purple-gold energy stored in the core surged out, racing through the array patterns on the hull. The entire harvester erupted in a blinding light. The 6 layers of drilled discs accelerated, one after another, until they were a blur. Tiny arcs of spiritual lightning danced on the teeth. The purple flames that were blocking us were suddenly sucked into the energy slots. I tapped the roof with my old wrench. Their energy levels weren't even on the same scale as mine. How did they expect to block this? The drill's rotation speed exploded. A piercing screech echoed through the mountain. A crack appeared on the purple light screen. Wang Yi's smile froze. An array master scrambled to the control platform, frantically swapping out spirit stones. He yelled that the eastern patterns were breaking. The machine wasn't just hitting them, it was draining their energy. Wang Yi kicked the man aside and slammed his own storage bag onto the array. He dumped thousands of mid-grade spirit stones into the core. The purple light thickened for a second. Then, the purple-gold arcs from my drill swept across it. There was a sickening snap. The first layer of the barrier tore open right down the middle. Wang Yi's eyes shrunk. He poured his own cultivation into the array, screaming that they still had 2 layers left. The second layer didn't even get a chance to settle. The 6-layer drill jammed into the gap, its teeth biting into the array lines. Huge chunks of purple light were ground up and tossed into the machine's crushing chamber. An explosion rocked the mountainside. 36 array platforms began spewing black smoke. 7 of them were ripped straight out of the ground. Cultivators guarding the positions collapsed as the backlash hit them. Wang Yi looked at his main control plate. It was covered in cracks. Only 2 breaths of time had passed. The mine manager grabbed Wang Yi's leg, crying and begging to run. The elder kicked him away and pulled out a dark gold array talisman. He refused to believe a 1,000-year family legacy could be stopped by a car. The 3rd layer of the barrier shrank, concentrating all its power into a single, massive purple shield right in front of the drill. I glanced at the energy gauge and popped a sunflower seed into my mouth. Concentrating the energy in one spot just made it easier for me to recycle. On the 3rd breath, the drill slammed into the giant shield. The 6 discs locked together, grinding the purple light into the intake. The entire defense array went dark. Platforms shattered. Flags and rocks were tossed into the sky. The Xiang mine was completely exposed. Wang Yi stood frozen on the peak, holding a broken control plate. The mockery was gone. 2,000 cultivators stared up at my steel beast, their flying swords hovering uselessly in the air. The array that was supposed to stop a master for half an hour had lasted 3 seconds. The harvester rolled over the ruins of the gate and crossed the boundary line. Taiju slapped the steering wheel in excitement. We were in. Li Guden pointed at the slope ahead, shouting that the ore and the people were right there. I spit out a seed shell and picked up the loudspeaker. I told them to notify the employees to move out of the way so we didn't hit them while working. Taiju grabbed the mic. He shouted for the fellow workers to clear the area immediately, warned them that the equipment wouldn't be responsible for any losses if they stood in the way. Wang He's face turned a deep, angry red. I was driving into his family's biggest mine and calling his men fellow workers. He drew his long sword and pointed it at us. He ordered everyone to open fire, promising punishment for anyone who held back. 2,000 cultivators unleashed hell. Hundreds of flying swords, thunder axes, and fire spells rained down. Flames engulfed the machine from the treads to the roof. Wang He watched, his veins bulging, screaming for them to break the armor. The swords struck the plating in a continuous rhythm of steel on steel. When the smoke cleared, the harvester hadn't moved an inch. The refinery furnace at the back was still puffing out smoke. There wasn't even a scratch on the hull. A system notification popped up, low-intensity external impact detected. Composite armor wear, 0.001%. Taiju stared at the number, his tension turning into total confusion. They had attacked with everything, and it barely counted as a scuff. I checked the paint. I told the crew we still had to bill them. Cleaning and repainting cost money. Xiaoyu was already clicking her abacus in the mobile accounting room. She asked if this counted as malicious damage to sect property. I told her it did. I told her to write a separate invoice for every single one of the 2,000 people. Wang He heard our conversation through the speakers. His chest heaved. He grabbed a third-tier lightning talisman and threw it with all his might. It struck the cockpit window and exploded in a burst of purple lightning. When the light faded, Li Guden was just staring at him through the glass. Guden looked down at a big red button on the console. He remembered what I told him. Don't leave a single scrap behind. He slammed his hand down. Devour mode activated. The harvester's front armor split open. Dozens of rows of crushing gears slid out like serrated teeth. A massive steel maw gaped wide, ready to feed. The ground groaned as the machine surged forward. A massive layer of earth was ripped straight off the Zijin mine. Wang He stood there, his sword trembling and his face frozen in shock. My machine wasn't hunting his guards anymore. It was aiming for the mountain itself. I sat comfortably under a sunshade, sipping a cold bowl of sour plum soup. The machine was already in the thick of it. Wang He pointed his sword at the cockpit, his voice cracking with rage. He screamed that his family had owned this mine for 700 years. He threatened to wipe out my entire sect if I dared to take even a single stone. I checked the systems or count. I told him he was wrong. I wasn't taking a single stone. I was taking the whole mountain. I slammed my hand down on the master control for devour mode. The steel mouth crashed into the slope. The guards at the front didn't even try to fight. They turned and ran, but their flying swords got tangled in a panicked heap. They screamed at each other to move, but the machine was faster. One guard bit his tongue to spray blood on his bronze bell artifact. A massive golden bell rose to protect him. A mechanical arm snatched it out of the air. Snap! The bell and his flying sword were sucked into the intake like scrap metal. The guard turned and fled up the hill, crying about his life's work. I didn't care. The treads rolled over the boundary stones. The mountain rock crumbled layer by layer. Ore, debris, and broken artifacts were all swept into the belly of the beast. A few guards tried to activate their protective light, but they only lasted half a second before they were swallowed whole. Inside the cabin, Taiju gripped the steering wheel, his face twitching. He looked at me and asked if the machine was a bit too hungry. Li Guden pointed out a large or tower on the left. He asked if we should steer around it. The system flagged it as a low-value obstacle. I told him to drive straight through. I wasn't going to let a cheap building delay production. Taiju spun the wheel. The harvester slammed into the tower, and the entire structure collapsed. Beams, supports, and even the front sign disappeared into the gears. A mine manager huddled behind a rock, his pants soaked with fear. He wailed to Wang He that they couldn't stop it. The tower was gone. The east cave was gone. Wang He grabbed him by the collar and told him to shut up. He claimed the mine was 300 miles wide. He didn't believe one machine could eat it all. Then the 6-layer drill discs fully deployed. The mountain began to sink. 10 meters. 30. 50. The slope tilted so sharply that 2,000 guards lost their footing. They started rolling down the hill toward the crushing maw. The mountain was literally collapsing into my machine. Mechanical arms flicked the struggling guards away, but they didn't leave empty-handed. They snatched the storage bags right off their belts. Xiaoya leaned out of the accounting window, clutching her ledger. She shouted that all items were being confiscated for safekeeping. One guard screamed that his bag held 30 years of savings. Xiaoya told him that was just enough to cover the equipment cleaning fee. Inside the harvester, the furnace roared. Impurities were spat out the side, while molten metal flowed through 6 pipes to the rear. The first square ingot slid out of the discharge port. Clang! It hit the transport rack, glowing red-hot. Then another, and another. The refining elder stood on the platform, his eyes wide. He tested an ingot with a detection array. The array lit up with a perfect golden light. There was no dross, no impurities. It was 100% pure. Xiaoya popped her head out of the office. She asked how much it was worth. The elder's hands shook. He said this metal didn't even need refining. It could be used for high-grade artifacts immediately. The market price would be triple the usual rate. Xiaoya started clicking her abacus. She told me one full load was worth 6 million spirit stones. I grabbed a handful of melon seeds and told her we weren't selling. We needed all of it to finish my order of 100,000 flying swords. She hesitated, then wrote "unlimited potential" in the profit column of her book. The machine kept grinding. Broken swords were melted into spirit copper. Protective charms were stripped for their array materials. Even the 36 foundation stones of the mine's defense array were sucked into the sorting slot. The system notifications flashed rapidly. We had recycled over 1,700 artifacts. We had produced 1,000,000 pounds of iron and 8,000 pounds of copper. As the numbers climbed, Wang He's face turned deathly pale. The mountain was vanishing before his eyes. The massive mineral vein that had sustained his family for centuries was now just a stump of rock. He finally dropped his sword. His lips trembled as he looked at me. He begged me to stop. He said we could talk about the mine. I looked up from my soup. I asked him what happened to slaughtering my entire family. He looked down at his feet and whispered that it was all just a misunderstanding. Wang He threw down his long sword and frantically pulled out a Wang family jade token. He looked at me, his voice shaking, and offered a deal. He said he could represent the mine and we could split the profits 50-50 or even 60-40 in my favor. I just laughed. I told him I owned the equipment, the power source, and the transport. I asked him what he brought to the table to justify 40%. Wang He watched the mountain peak behind him continue to sink into the ground. Large beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He begged me to stop and said everything was negotiable. He claimed the mine belonged to the Wang family. I asked him for the title deed. He looked down at the token in his hand, realized he had no leverage, and suddenly spun around. He stepped onto a flying sword and shot into the sky like a streak of light. He screamed back at me, telling me to wait, and that his ancestor would make me spit out everything I had swallowed. I leaned back in my grand chair. I didn't even bother picking up the control jade. I just muttered that someone was escaping with company assets and told the security department to handle it. The radar on top of the machine spun instantly. It flagged the high-speed target. The system determined he was carrying a mine management token and labeled it as asset theft. The anti-air cannons locked on. Wang He heard the mechanical whirring behind him and looked back in horror. 8 barrels were already raised, with red spiritual light gathering at the muzzles. He screamed that he surrendered, but it was too late. A crimson beam tore through the sky. Wang Yi's protective robe flickered for a split second before he and his flying sword exploded together. A mist of blood rained down, and the broken Wang family token fell right into our recycling bin. Silence returned to the mining area. The guards watched the blood mist settle and immediately dropped their weapons. They begged us not to fire. They shouted that they were willing to sign employee contracts. One man claimed he was a real miner and knew how to push a cart. Another said he just wanted food because the Wang family hadn't paid them in 3 months. One even offered to lead the way to a hidden vein of spirit copper in the West Tunnel. Zhao Dezhu jumped onto a mobile registration desk and held up a stack of leftover forms. He told them to line up and not to crowd. He gave priority to those with mining experience and told the Wong family relatives to hand over their storage bags first. The harvester kept moving. The last half of the mountain peak was swallowed by its massive steel maw. A few breaths later, the meat grinder drills finally stopped. The rolling Zijin mineral mountains were gone. In their place was a pit 100 feet deep, with a floor so flat we could have built a factory on it immediately. The rear cargo bay was packed with standard crystal iron spikes. Dozens of trailers were piled high into silver-gray hills. Xiaoya sat at the highest point, the clicking of her abacus echoing across the fleet. She announced we had 9.6 million pounds of crystal iron and 27,000 pounds of spirit copper. We also had 1,800 crates of artifact materials. She looked at me, eyes wide, and said we had truly scraped the Wong family dry. I looked at the weight gauges and pointed toward the Luoyun sect. I ordered the fleet to return to the factory. I wanted the flying sword production lines running 3 shifts starting tonight. The heavy harvester turned slowly, its treads grinding over the edge of the deep pit. One by one, the loaded trailers roared to life, the sound stretching into the distance. The remaining Wong family guards looked up, but the Zijin mountain they once knew was gone. I leaned back and took a sip of my sour plum soup. The Wong family had bought the rights to this mine. Now, they didn't even have a mine left to own. When we returned to the Luoyun factory, all 6 mountain transport roads were completely blocked. The silver-gray glow of the crystal iron stretched from the base of the mountain all the way to the main peak. 3,000 workers stood by the road, their necks straining to see the end of the convoy. Wang Taizhu pulled the power lever and grinned. He told me every bit of the Wong family mountain had been brought back. Li Guden poked his head out from the passenger seat and added that 3 pieces had fallen off, but he'd jumped out to grab them. Xiaoya ran to the first trailer with her ledger, her fingers flying over the abacus. She calculated that at market price, this single trip had earned us 6.4 million spirit stones. I sat on my chair atop the machine and pointed toward the smelting furnaces. I told her that until it was turned into a product, it was just a pile of rocks taking up space. Her smile vanished, and she immediately started waving her ledger at the transport team. She screamed at them to unload and threatened to dock the pay of anyone who rested. Hundreds of conveyor belts extended from the factory, latching onto the cargo base. The sound of silver iron spikes rolling into the chutes drowned out everything else. The furnaces, which had been cold for 5 days, roared back to life with flames shooting 100 feet into the air. The system confirmed the connection of high-purity iron and Grade 3 array materials. The fully automated flying sword production line kicked into full gear. I picked up an old wrench and whacked the control casing. 12 rows of mechanical hammers fell simultaneously. Glowing red iron was instantly pressed into sword blanks. Mechanical arms grabbed the blades and dipped them into quenching tanks. A second set of arms carved the arrays. The energy slots, spirit radars, and self-destruct modules were installed in sequence. The silver-gray blades began to glow with blue light. The first batch of 10 standard flying swords slid off the belt. Then the second batch, then the third. 10, 20, 100. Every time the belt moved, 10 top-tier flying swords dropped into the transport racks. The refining elder stood by the inspection table, his hands trembling as he held one of the swords. He whispered that it was top grade. He swapped out 3 different testing plates, and all of them glowed with purple light. The arrays were perfect, the spirit conduction was at max capacity, and the sharpness was peak quality. He looked devastated. He said it took him 2 years of secluded meditation to forge one sword, yet this machine spat out 10 in the blink of an eye. Wang Taizhu waved his wrench and told the elder that the machine could exceed his entire life's work in the time it took to blink. The elder's shoulders slumped. He wondered aloud what he had been doing with his life for the last 120 years. Zhou Wanshan walked by with a broom and patted the elder's shoulder. He told him to look on the bright side. He had been a sect leader for 300 years, and now he was in charge of the latrines. The pile of flying swords grew higher, soon filling half the plaza on the main peak. As the first mountain of swords grew taller than the refining hall, a second mountain began to rise. The blue light from the flickering arrays illuminated the faces of every worker. Xiaoya was excited at first, But by the time she reached the third page of her ledger, her pen stopped. She looked at the mountains of swords, then at her empty order book. Her smile faded. She asked me if we had forgotten something. I leaned back in my chair, still sipping my soup. I asked if the cafeteria was over budget again. She said it was worse than that. She pointed at the 3 mountains of swords and asked the one question that mattered. Who were we going to sell them to? The 3,000 cheering workers went silent. Zhou Wanshan stopped sweeping, his face turning pale. The Wang family blockade was still in effect. All 12 local markets were forbidden from selling Luoyun sect goods. The refining elder took off his safety helmet, his brow furrowed. He mentioned that the refining pavilion had issued a new rule just yesterday. Anyone caught buying our swords would be banned from the refiner's registry for life. Wang Taizhu looked at the growing piles of weapons. His voice dropped to a whisper. He asked if we should shut down the machines. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any room left in the plaza by tomorrow. I looked at the power gauges. We had fought for the mine. We had started the lines. I wasn't about to shut down just because nobody wanted to buy yet. Li Guden scratched his head, looking confused. He muttered that even if we built a mountain of swords, we couldn't trade them for snacks if nobody bought them. Xiaoyan nodded frantically. She flipped her ledger to the expense page and shoved it toward me. The raw materials might have been free, but we still had to pay the workers and buy meat for the cafeteria. We already had 30,000 blades sitting in the warehouse. If we kept going, the inventory would literally bury the factory floor. I finished the last sip of my plum soup and let a smile slip. The Wang family had blockaded the markets, sure, but they hadn't blockaded the people's wallets. Zhou Wanshan paused his sweeping, looking skeptical. He pointed out that every cultivator in the area was terrified of the Wang family. Even if they had the money, they wouldn't dare to be seen buying from us. Then we won't let them be seen, I said. I gestured with my wrench toward the mountain gate. Where's Zhao Dezhu? Pull him out of the manure truck. Half an hour later, that familiar, stinking cart rattled into the 6-lane driveway. As soon as the wheels stopped, Zhao Dezhu kicked aside the wooden floorboards and crawled out, pinching his nose. His sleeves were stained with filth, and he was clutching a high-grade scent-masking array disc to his chest. He gasped for air, telling me he hadn't been idle. He had scouted all 6 major market towns in the past few days. Xiaoya took 3 quick steps back, covering her face. She warned him to stay away from the accounting office, or the smell would ruin the books forever. Zhao Dezhu awkwardly pulled his sleeves tight, but then his eyes landed on the 3 mountains of swords. He froze. He asked if those were all flying swords. Top-tier standard issue, I said. And I'm putting you in charge of a new project. I tossed a thick stack of papers into his arms. He flipped to the first page, and his brow furrowed immediately. He read the title aloud. Pin Shi Shi, a downward market marketing strategy. He looked up, puzzled. He asked what kind of merchant guild Pin Shi Shi was, saying he'd never heard of it. For now, it's just you, I replied. I tapped the second page with my wrench. If the markets won't let us sell, we go to the black market. If the shops are too scared to stock us, we find rogue cultivators to act as our agents. Zhao Dezhu flipped through the pages faster and faster, his breathing turning shallow. The plan was filled with terms he'd never seen. Group buying, price slashing, multi-level distribution, anonymous delivery, and a 3-day no-questions-asked return policy. Then he saw the suggested retail price for a top-tier flying sword. 99 low-grade spirit stones. His hands shook. He looked at me, wide-eyed, asking if I had forgotten a 0. A top-tier sword usually cost at least 3,000 stones. 99 wouldn't even cover the cost of the raw ore. Xiaoya heard the price and lunged forward, clutching her ledger like a shield. She asked if I was selling swords or running a charity. I pointed toward the piles of refined iron filling the yard. The materials were provided voluntarily by the Wang family. The energy came from stolen spirit stones. The production didn't require a single expensive master refiner. Our cost per blade was exactly 17 spirit stones. Zhao Dezhu's jaw dropped. He stood there like a statue. Xiaoya, however, was already clicking her abacus. The panic in her eyes vanished instantly. At 99 stones, we were still making 82 stones in profit per sword. If we sold 100,000, that was over 8 million. I chuckled. The profit was just a bonus. My real goal was to shatter the Wang family's monopoly. I turned to the last page of the plan, where a single line was written in bold: drive the price into the dirt, put a blade in every rogue's pocket. Zhao Deju stared at those words, sweat beads forming on his forehead. He realized that if a top-tier sword cost 99, the trash swords sold by other shops for 800 would become worthless overnight. Every refining shop in the 12 markets would have to close. Let them close, I said. I pushed 10 storage rings toward him. When they go bust, Luoyuan Industry will take over their storefronts. Zhao Deju looked at the rings, filled to the brim with silver-gray swords. He swallowed hard. He asked how many we were releasing in the first batch. 50,000, I said. Flood the black markets. If that's not enough, I'll give you 30,000 more. He stuffed the rings into his robe. He didn't need any more convincing. He said he'd leave tonight. Under the cover of darkness, the manure truck rumbled out of the factory again. The exterior was caked in mud, but hidden in a false compartment beneath the filth were the 10 rings. Zhao Deju huddled in the back, clutching the marketing plan. 100 miles away, the lights of the black market were already flickering. 50,000 swords were about to hit the market like a tidal wave. By midnight, the last official lights in the Black Rock market went out, but a boarded-up warehouse in the West District suddenly flared to life. Zhao Deju climbed out of his truck and sniffed his sleeve. He looked miserable. He complained that the Wang family had been chasing him for 5 days, and this smell had been with him just as long. He was definitely claiming this as a workplace injury. 2 Luoyuan disciples hauled out a massive wooden frame and hung a 30-foot-long red banner across the warehouse wall. Gold letters filled the street. Luoyuan Industry, top-tier flying swords for 9.9 stones. Free shipping. Below that, in smaller letters, it read, invite 3 friends to slash the price and get your sword for free. The street went silent for a heartbeat, and then a wave of laughter erupted from the shadows. People mocked the sign. They asked if 9.9 stones could even buy a scabbard. The cheapest trash sword the Wang sold was 80 stones. They called it a scam, wondering if Zhao Deju had lost his mind and turned to charity. Dozens of rogue cultivators gathered at the corner, but nobody moved toward the stall. Zhao Deju stepped up onto a wooden crate and grabbed a voice-amplifying jade. He shouted for everyone to look closely. Top-tier swords for 9.9 stones. On-site testing allowed. Satisfaction guaranteed. Free shipping within 100 miles. A dark-faced cultivator in the crowd spat out a sunflower seed shell. He told Zhao Deju that while they were poor, they weren't stupid. He joked that if a sword was 9.9, maybe a golden core pill was only 10 stones. Zhao Deju just smiled. He said they were out of stock on pills, but he had plenty of swords. The laughter grew louder. Nearby shopkeepers opened their windows to watch the circus. A man named Sun, who sold magical tools, leaned out and shouted that if those iron scraps were top tier, then the hoes in his warehouse were ancient artifacts. Zhao Deju didn't argue. He pulled a silver-gray sword from a crate. It had no decorative carvings. The hilt only bore a serial number. It looked painfully plain. Manager Sun pointed and laughed, noting that we'd even skipped the basic aesthetic runes. He claimed 9.9 was too expensive for something that looked like a kitchen knife. The crowd started to disperse, but Zhao Deju remained calm. He stuck the sword back in the box and shouted that they should buy it first and curse him later. If it didn't work, they'd get a full refund. At the edge of the crowd, a scrawny cultivator named Chen Qi stopped. His hand stayed pressed against the tattered pouch at his waist. He was at the 6th level of Qi refining, and the broken sword he carried was 12 years old. 3 days ago, he'd failed a herb-gathering mission because he couldn't even wound a basic iron-skinned wolf. If he didn't get a new weapon, he wouldn't be able to pay his rent next month. Chen Qi bit his lip and squeezed through the crowd to the stall. He asked if the refund policy was real. Zhao Deju handed him a sword and spread out a formal contract. 7-day, no reason returns. If it breaks, we replace it. If it bends, we replace it. If you lose it, you're on your own. Chen Qi hesitated, asking how the 9.9 stones worked. 9 spirit stones and 90 spirit pearls, Zhao Deju replied. Chen Qi knelt by the stall and began pouring every single spirit pearl he owned out of his pouch, one by one. The laughter in the market died down, replaced by a heavy, pitying silence. Poor Qin-Shi lifted his bag of spirit pearls, the sound of clinking glass filling the air as more people crowded around. Manager's son, the snake from the 100-herb pavilion, couldn't keep his mouth shut. He shouted at the kid, telling him that even 9 stones were too much to lose to a scammer like me. Qin-Shi didn't listen. He finished counting his meager savings and looked up at Zhao Dezhu, my man on the ground. He told Zhao that if the sword broke, he'd be back for blood. Zhao just grinned. He told him he was welcome back any time, as long as he kept his receipt. Qin-Shi took the sword and weighed it in his hand. It was light. The spiritual interface looked plain, almost unfinished. It didn't look like a high-grade artifact at all. The crowd sneered. They whispered that the thing would probably shatter the moment he channeled his power. Qin-Shi's face turned pale. He looked like he wanted to ask for his money back, but Zhao Dezhu was already pointing toward the center of the black market. There stood a massive strength-testing stone, 30 feet of solid black flame rock. It was the ultimate judge of a weapon's worth. Most mid-grade swords only left a faint white scratch. The best the elite Wang family ever managed was a 17-inch cut. Qin-Shi's palms were slick with sweat. He told Zhao that if he lost face here, he wanted a refund. Zhao just waved him off. He told him that losing face was free of charge. Qin-Shi took a deep breath. He channeled his qi, pouring every drop of his power into the blade. The sword hummed. Suddenly, the silver-gray metal erupted in a blinding light. 12 sets of amplification runes flared to life simultaneously, floating around the blade like a crown. A massive beam of sword energy shot out, instantly blowing out the nearby spirit lamps. Manager's son's smile froze. He was leaning so far out of his shop window, he almost fell onto the street. 12 runes. I had packed 12 sets of runes into a budget blade. He couldn't believe his eyes. Qin-Shi was stunned, but the sword's internal logic was already working. A prompt flashed in his mind. Spiritual link established. Target distance confirmed. Strike angle adjusted 3 inches to the right. Qin-Shi's arm moved on its own, guided by the machine's cold precision. He swung. The silver light sliced through the air and hit the center of the testing stone. The 30-foot slab split clean in two. The crack didn't stop at the base. It tore through the stone platform and carved a 20-foot hole in the warehouse wall behind it. The heavy stone collapsed with a roar that shook the street. The black market's defensive arrays began to scream in alarm. Qin-Shi just stood there, holding the sword, his mouth hanging open. He hadn't even used a specialized sword technique yet. The crowd went dead silent. The mockery was gone. Manager's son scrambled out of his shop, not even stopping to put on his shoes. He ran to the stone and pulled out a measuring ruler. He checked the cut 3 times. 4 feet deep. It hadn't just beaten the Wang family's record. It had doubled it. The silence broke instantly. The threat was clear. The lines straightened up instantly. Zhao Dezhu wiped the sweat from his brow as he checked the ledger. The profit margin on a 9-stone sword was thin, but when you sold 100,000 of them, it didn't matter. We weren't just making money. We were smashing the Wang family's entire pricing system into dust. Once a cultivator held one of my blades, they'd never pay 100 stones for the Wang family's trash ever again. Suddenly, a group at the back of the line caught Zhao's eye. They were tall, moved with military discipline, and had Wang family badges hanging from their belts. One of them looked around nervously before stripping off his silver guard uniform and stuffing it into a bag. The others followed suit, revealing plain shirts underneath. They huddled together, whispering for everyone to keep their heads down so Zhao wouldn't recognize them. One guard whispered to his captain, asking if buying from the Luoyun sect counted as treason. The captain snapped at him to shut up. He told him that the swords the Wang family gave them couldn't even scratch the testing stone. The captain clutched his coin purse, counting out his spirit stones. He told his men to buy 10 swords each and hide them in the patrol carriage. But as they shuffled forward, Zhao Dezhu appeared right behind them, ledger in hand. He smiled and asked if the Wang family's procurement team wanted the standard customer discount. The captain froze, and 99 spirit stones spilled out of his shaking hands, scattering across the dirt.